So we're starting with the demographics, December.
Oh, yeah, you wanted. to
Yeah,
get
let's
that
start with
first.
the
Right.
demographics. So
Is that on, is there a slide on that?
there should be.
Yeah.
Jay sent it. to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, he's in here.
It's me too. I did when I.
And Mayor, what you call order on the introduction real quick?
Okay, I just wanted to be familiar.
Say hello to the neighbor too, let you have.
Tell me when they're ready.
Okay, so can you slow down? Was that it?
That's all.
Last year. This probably is. Whatever. Like it was. So she's everything she was.
You need me to send it to
You
you?
send it if you would to this, what's your computer right here?
Yeah, my computer is on.
Okay.
I think I'm echoing too.
Yeah, that's something.
How do we fix the echo?
One of the volumes has to be on.
Yeah.
Your mind is muted. Serious.
Yeah.
Serious.
So that was a lovely voice.
Oh,
Very important.
You're my, you're on the splash drive right here. And
You just get it out tonight.
you could, maybe easiest way to do
Is
it.
it easiest for me to email it to you? I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out.
You, and then you put on there, or can I go flash?
Yes.
Okay. It's probably the most voting, you have that speaker thing voting.
It should be good. I've got his phone number written here for good measure. Have it all. Have it. That's all I'm gonna need. I know, right? I'm sure you. Okay.
There you are.
Nope. I'm gonna play back.
That was quick.
Okay. Video.
It's.
There we go.
Okay, there it is. Okay, is it, the microphone going?
The email is what's open now, so if you go. It's the first one.
Just go ahead and click one.
This, so I have,
Go ahead and click one. It's the number one or number two?
it's one is fine.
It's one. Pull the one up. But what we want to do is you want
Make
to
it a
open,
slide, yeah.
you want to open the agenda. and then
Yes,
the
so
introduction.
I
This is
call-
really.
I call this city council retreat on March 22nd to order. Eric, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, yes. And generally, I can stand wherever, right? It's got,
Yep.
okay. All right, first of all, as I said in Canton, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of the schedule to have the retreat. It's a big deal for staff and for the council to have these type of informational settings and where we can all talk about our goals and where we've been and where we're going. A lot of different challenges that we want to try to shed light on for the city. And we're going to, Dunwoody, of course, is a premier city within the region, within the state. As you grow in the state, some of the places you go to, whether it's GMA or my organizations, the Chiefs organizations, Dunwoody is highly thought of throughout the state. And so from that standpoint, I want you to feel good about those things. What we have today, I'm going to go through the majority of the information on here, but I do want to introduce, and Ken, you were going to make introductions, I believe, of our, you want to say?
I didn't know I was doing it. Talk about passing the time.
So, Callie Boatwright is a chamber executive that is par excellence. Nobody is better in the state of Georgia. She's won all kinds of awards. She is the president, CEO, I think I got it right, of the North Fulton Chamber of Commerce. But before she got into chamber work, she's very young, decades ago. She was in senior management for a global nonprofit that dealt with governments in many countries. So she's been broadly exposed to the world. She's got brilliant kids. We have a child that's pretty close to the same age, and her daughter graduated from Georgia Tech with a 4.0 in chemical engineering, if that tells you anything about her, how she thinks. Very smart. Her son is a brilliant kid because he went to Georgia like I did. But Callie, I want to just, as a prelude to Callie is used to dealing with thinkers and trying to direct them to something that can be seen and that something can put milepost on and have achievable goals. And so with y'all's permission today, she's going to try to let everybody speak and she'll go through the ground rules. But she's sort of being a referee to help y'all get where y'all want to go. She has no premonition about where y'all want to go, and that's why she was chosen. So Callie, do you want to come up and say anything?
More than happy to. You want me to go ahead and go through the different now?
Yes.
First of all, I want to say hello and thank you for having me here. I am happy to help you in whatever way I can do that best. There are a lot of words that can use. My entire professional career has been spent in nonprofit management. As he mentioned, I work for an international honors organization called Golden Key, now International Honor Society. I was part of the group that took us from national to international at that time. Helped open the Australian office and then had children and decided that it was a great time for me to change my careers. Became the chamber president in Douglas County. Was there for 14 years and ran that chamber and met these two individuals and had great working relationships. At that time, I have been the Greater North Fulton Chamber president for 5 years next week. So fairly new from that perspective, but have chaired the State Association for Chambers of Commerce and have been actively engaged in facilitating lots of different kind of organizations. The other thing I want to do is say thank you. You guys are in a position, obviously, of leadership, which is something that we focus on. I get to work with city councils in 5 cities all the time, 6 cities, including Mountain Park, Sandy Springs, Roswell, Alpharetta, Milton Mountain Park, Johns Creek, as I mentioned, and so work with all of those cities and do my best to make sure that we keep excellent relationships with our elected officials. But you guys are in a amazing place to be able to set direction for the city of Dunwoody, which the entire time I have lived in Atlanta has been a city that I can say only good things about. So I was delighted for the opportunity to come speak to you. All right, that said, my job, if I choose to examine, as mission as possible. I always start with purpose. And so I was asking Eric, who got a little bit of his why, but nobody wants to have a meeting without a reason, right? That would be silly. And you all in this position, obviously, all have things that you do and you're taking time away from to be able to set some strategic direction. So I wanted to ask you what you feel the purpose of this meeting is so that we can all agree and move forward under that. I know that Eric mentioned obviously strategic direction and visioning. Anything specific on the purpose element? I'd like to get sort of a statement down to that.
I think it worked very well last year to come away with set expectations And not that we're gonna address every challenge, we're not gonna find a solution necessarily for much for in the next 36 hours. 24 hours, but we're gonna figure out what has to be done and we're gonna assign who's going to do it. And we're gonna set goals around the time.
And so do you have a defined timeline for this? Is this direction for the next year, the next 3 years, for the next
Next
9
year, well, it depends, but for tasks,
Yes,
for the most part, they're within the year.
so short and long.
Short, yeah, short.
SMA.
Smart.
Right.
Right. So, and then as a background to that, some visioning and looking forward, correct? Strategy as
Mostly
well.
looking forward.
So a little bit of short term, a little bit of.
Yes. The short-term goals are needed to move us forward towards the long-term.
Sure. You gotta have confidence to get us to that point as well. Right. Perfect. All right, so we all generally accept that this is our purpose and why we're here. We're all comfortable with that. That's wonderful. These are the reasons I'm here, the way I understand it. So this is your chance to correct me before I go off into a direction you don't want me to go. So first one, to keep everybody focused on our goal. So if this is what we say our purpose is and what we're doing here, then I want to make sure that we're staying focused. Also a little bit motivated, right? So I'm gonna using group process, just kind of keep an eye on everybody, and if we need chocolate, don't make me get it out, I will. So whatever we need to do to make sure that we stay focused, but also excited about the direction we're going. Second, I want to make sure everyone participates. I mean, you guys obviously have a group dynamic. You've been doing this for quite some time. But I want to make sure everybody has a chance to participate. No one feels like they weren't heard. And certainly when someone speaks that we understand what they're saying. So I'll be keeping an eye out for that. Everybody's good with that so far. Obviously you all should ask questions. I happen to be the person in the room who knows the least, which is great because I, as Ken so aptly put it, came in with no preconceived ideas or notions about what direction you should or shouldn't take. That's not my job. That's your job. My job is to make sure that the process is done well. And so just making sure that if I don't understand, if I'm seeing questioning looks, I will sort of stop us and make sure that everybody understands where we are and what we're talking about. And so it's my job to kind of read the room and make sure group process is working. Achievable action items, Mayor, I think that's back to your point, right? Something solid that we can leave with that are achievable. And in that bucket, we're gonna have, and hopefully we'll write them out, right? Hopefully we'll have some sort of now goals, and then we'll have some aspirational goals, knowing full well that there's a big difference between planning to paint your bathroom this weekend and put in a pool, right? So those are two very different things. So we'll have some now goals, some aspirational goals. And then finally, I love to keep a parking lot because sometimes things come up that really have no business on the agenda today, but we feel very passionate about it. We want to make sure that they don't get forgotten. So we'll have a parking lot. Anything you'd like to add to my 5-point list here? Well, you guys are easy. So this is what we so far. That no, actually, all right, so this is where we're starting. If I guess we'll retain the right to add things if we go through and find that we need to. But in the meantime, I'm gonna flip the parking lot back over as we start discussion, and I'm gonna try to be unobtrusive unless there's some need for me, and I'll sneak around behind you. All right, Eric, I'll turn that back to you or to the mayor.
Yeah, and Mayor, you wanted to go over, thank you, Kelly.
Fine.
Information. Anyway, we did want to go over some basic rules and everything, and Mayor, the whole thing is, as you know, we've got a very good council to work with. We don't have anybody on here that's bashful. You know, all like to pick up, and I really appreciate that. I always love the feedback and the opportunity that I get to sit with y'all to get that more information that we can relay back to the staff. But Mayor, having said that, you wanted to go over some demographic information, and we've got that right here on the.
Right, so I wanted to thank everyone for making this work again. I really appreciate it. I think what we did last year was actually really successful in that we identified goals and action items, and we took care of it in a timely manner, except for one that I still haven't finished, but that's on me. So in light of visiting part of the reason I chose Canton was, that they're being very forward thinking, and with their, what was it called? The tenants, you know, they're tenants, they're really, they're for today, but they're really for 15 years from now, 20 years from now, and 10 years from now, and that's really where I think we need to be focusing. You know, some of our discussions, you know, we have immediate needs and really long-term needs, and sweet spot is probably somewhere in the middle. And so I thought it would help to take a look at what's happened in Dunwoody in the last decade. So our population grew about 12%, which is slower than it did between 2000 and 2010. One notable difference between the previous 10 years and the current, you know, the 10 years that ended is that if there were apartment complexes that finished, they were finishing in 2010. We have had no new multifamily housing constructed. We've had townhomes, but there was no new apartment complexes constructed. Whereas between 2000 and 2010, there were a lot. And so, but we grew. DeKalb County as a whole grew the slowest in the region, I think. And so, but we did grow. All right. So in 2010, there wasn't much change between the percentage of the Dunwoody population over 50, a little bit more increase over 65. Our average age, I can't read any of that, I don't know if that's what it says, but our average age has gotten slightly younger. But what's significant to me, so I think it was like 39 at some point in the last few years, and now it's 36 and a half or so. But what's more significant to me than our change is that some of our neighboring cities or cities nearby, like Johns Creek, have gotten much older, like their average age is like 41. And so we're getting younger while some of the North Fulton cities are getting older.
And Mary, that's a very important fact to note, because I think before this chart here, you know, we were an older community gone down. The average age in a growing community is somewhere usually around 36. So when I say growing, a new area, a new emerging area. So we're kind of approaching that with all the kind of new housing and different things that we have.
Okay, so we are much more diverse, I think I can safely say, in 2020, you know, where we are now, than we were in 2010. We are less white. We are, I can't see.
Yeah, the biggest population shift has been in the Asian.
Right, we're more Asian.
Shift. And that's a very broad definition as well.
And we know this because of you know, who's coming to work for the companies. Hispanic should be on there, but maybe it's not.
Well, in the way
that's a different one.
Right, the Hispanic one is compiled into the and Chief, I think the way y'all do it too is compiled into the white category, and then so that has that category, and then you have the Asian categories, and then the other one is the other race, the green, and as two or more races is the blue. So that's going to be your biggest increase right there.
So if you'll keep going. So this is the ethnicity. So you can see that, can you read the numbers for us?
Yes.
Hispanic.
So it's the first one here, your Hispanic is 10%, 10.3%.
Right, now it's 12.
Right.
So we know that that's an
And 12.
undercount. We're not 30% like Canton, but you can see where the diversity is coming out, you know, how we've changed as a community.
What's the before and after on the Caucasian?
Yeah, so there's 60, so white was 64.1 and now it's 53.8. And then African American was 12.9, 11.7, so pretty stable there. American Indian 0.2.1. Asian was your biggest change, I believe, which was 11.1 to 17.1. And then the other race, or two or more races, are the one I wanted to point out, 1.7 to 3.7. But to answer your question, 64 to 53.8, so 54. It's a pretty significant change there. And that was the last slide.
So I just wanted to provide this information as we move forward, because we aren't the same community we were when we became a city. or even, we're just changing, we're evolving. We can all see it, and we all experience it on a daily basis.
Yeah, and the reason that's very important, and we wanted to share that information is because as we look at the services we provide and the type of recreational activities, the type of services, the service that we provide, of course, police, and then we and the other services people use all the time, type of zoning you do, that does matter. And that's what we have to look at there. And as I was saying earlier, and I'm not trying to blow the Dunwoody horn, we're all here as part of Dunwoody. But it is an area that's really emerging. Some of our, former mayors used to say, hey, this is downtown. This is the new at the center of Atlanta. And I think in a lot of ways it is, but then, we still have that huge suburban element that's within our community. A lot of people feel that, the residential that's there is just like it was 40 years ago when they moved here in terms of the same reasons. They still love being here for the same reasons. Where some of us were talking in Canton, not just us, but the city of Canton folks were talking about safety issues. We always view ourselves as a safe community. We want to continue that. The chief's going to talk more about some of that stuff later in today's presentation. Those are very important factors as we're luring business here. Without a safe community, business won't come in, residents won't come in. You have to continue to grow and expand in the sense of your ideas. And that's why this retreat's exciting. All right, so what we're looking at here is, this is Dunwoody's own direction. So what we did, we took the information that we currently have and we kind of translated it back to what Canton has done. Now, it's not quite the same, but I wanted to look at what we have. I think to get to where Canton is, if that's the kind of roadmap and the tenets y'all want to look at, something of that nature, we'll have to go back. After this retreat's done, my intent with the staff is to go back and have some staff retreat, some information I've been gathering for a while. I needed this information first, to know how to go to the next step of the staff. But I want to look at some different things from the ground up. What does staff want? I like what Canton said, because it was exactly what I was thinking. Is they want to meet with every person on the staff, regardless of their level, to see what those folks think. So what's the staff? Where's your staff? What do they think? We go out to the public. What do they think? About things as we move to the next vision. So that's very important. What I'm going to show here is part of our comprehensive plan and looking at those tenants. Like I said, you heard the city manager, Billy Peppers, say, hey, those aren't just designed for any one department. Some of this stuff may be more departmentalized or compartmentalized even. So as we go through these, you'll see some of that. So Dunwoody's own direction, 2020, we updated the comprehensive plan. And one of the big things was maintain and enhance residential amenities and housing types within our neighborhoods. Foster business-friendly climate and redevelopment target areas. So, and these are things that we're currently doing. We're very sensitive to anything that goes on in the neighborhood. We want to protect that at all costs. The business climate, we have an excellent economic development division with Michael Starling and his crew. People want to be in Dunwoody, but we want to make sure they want to be there. We want to be sure that to retain them is a bigger issue. And then also the redevelopment aspects. And that's mainly what y'all have. The biggest thing you'll see with most communities are, and y'all know this, which is Dunwoody's more unique. We don't have 32 acres sitting over to the line, for a park. We don't have 32 acres to develop into a subdivision. We're built out, we're redeveloping. That's a sensitive nature when it comes to rezonings and things of that nature. People come out in arms. I love our community from that standpoint. People come out and they're vocal. Now, the question always becomes are they representative of the whole community? So that's something you have to think about. Just because somebody's here and they're making a lot of noise, well, do they have other people that have come with them? Do they recommend that notice everybody? And we have our meetings at different times. We have everything's at night. We try to get the maximum focus people out there. Most people in general are happy in the communities in which they live. They don't go to the zoning. I never go to the zoning hearings. I live just outside of Dunwoody. I don't go to those zoning hearings. But if I see a sign, I'll check when I make a phone call. Hey, what's this about? And we get a lot of that information. That's not necessarily tracked by y'all. Y'all hear from people too, but the staff also hears from a lot of different folks. More of our goals is to promote connectivity. That was a major deal. Remember, that came out several retreats ago, was to promote that. And that means different things to different people, but modes of transportation, travel, transit, bicycle, and walking. Part of what we're going to talk about tomorrow deals with a lot of those different items. Expand the park's green space, and we've done that. We've spent a lot of money on buying additional property, working with communities, Waterford Park, and that Vermac Austin deal we put together. We have the new parks and open in a, you know, couple months, 2 bridges park. I said it right, not twin bridges, right? The 2 bridges. And so, you know, those are really good opportunities that we've come up with, and expand housing choices, aging in place. That's a big deal. Here again, it means different things to different people. You know, but part of what it means to me is, you know, it's your senior living environments where they're creating a whole area for the seniors to live, kind of like the one that was in on after Dunwoody, which has shifted a little bit from what the initial plan was, but at the same rate, it's that type of concept. Remember when we went to look at the name, I'm not gonna mention the name, we all know the name, but I'm not here to advertise, but the one we looked at in Cherokee County outside of Woodstock, you know, that center, that's a real aging in place item. A lot of our houses that were built back in the 70s and 80s are, you know, masters are not on the name. Some people don't like that as much for aging in place. Let's see, cultivate and expand access to arts and culture is part of what makes Dunwoody special. Maintain the strengths and city's commitment to sustainable practices and leverage Dunwoody's location. That's what I was mentioning earlier. That's our biggest strength, of course, you know, real estate, location. Here we are. And what is our best thing for keeping us as a job center? We're in uncharted territory. You know, we're uncharted territory from the sense of coming out of COVID. You know, what's the new workforce? What does that mean for us? What's it mean for our revenue? What's it mean for our restaurants? Restaurants are booming right now. Done a lot of new stuff coming in. Hopefully we can sustain, there's enough business to sustain all of those things. You know, in the economy, who knows? I mean, you read some reports this morning, I was reading some of the stuff, and you know, a few bank failures coming down the line, makes me a little nervous. Not nervous about the city, just nervous in general, you know, because it's all, but if I'm nervous, everybody's kind of nervous. You know, what does it mean for your personal finance? What's it mean for you? Are you going to tighten up your spending? Are you worried about your job security? Are you worried about your housing? So those are things that we have to think about a little bit. Kind of fun, some more fun stuff, implemented the front yard tree planting program. So I'm missing the main topic here. Maintain and enhance residential amenities and housing types within the neighborhood. Create simplified instruction for handing out permitting fees. You know, one thing, and I was talking to the chief, and I had a meeting yesterday with a company that was talking about some kind of disaster management. It's actually a person that approached the mayor. We met with him yesterday. And one thing that I was saying, hey, you know, each disaster is different. It comes down the line. COVID was the last disaster, the big one. But the city responded very well from an organization. You know, we all went home, had our laptops, we continue to operate. One of those things is the way we simplified our permitting. People could still do their permitting, everything online. We'd meet with them in the office through appointments, but we could do everything online and keep the system operational. And that's huge for an organization. This has been since the beginning of time, which was the monthly code enforcement in the apartment suites to maintain that level. This is still a challenge with the different apartments. As they get older in the city, we want to be sure they keep those up and maintain infrastructure and sidewalks and high quality standards. Making it happen, protect the existing property owners through code enforcement, zoning stuff, expand right-of-way maintenance efforts. That was something we did, and we added what we call the three man in the truck type thing. And that has helped. Hopefully y'all seen some differences there. You know, we're still a small operation when it comes to workforce. I don't have guys, always worries me the most with us. I'll use the word guys universally, but I don't have workers that can go out if a disaster comes with a chainsaw. You know, we got to rely on our backup contracts and anything like that. And we rely on DeKalb County. Those are big things that happen. We have an excellent rapport with our emergency management team at DeKalb County to get things going. The chief and his folks know the city back and forth. We've done a good job expanding those things. You have like a tornado hits or something like that, it does make some changes. You all know this from the standpoint, anytime something happens, weather related, we have to wait on Georgia Power. We've got a good relationship with them, but we can't put anybody on the ground until that power line is deactivated. So it becomes just little things like that that add up.
So do you want us to interrupt with questions, or you want us to wait till the end?
Let's wait till the end and then let's please don't forget it. Because I wanted to kind of hurry through this a little bit. And then because like I said, Mayor, and I don't really mind anybody interjects or interrupts, it's fine with me. But part of the thing is this system, what I'm trying to point out too, this is a lot different than Canton's tenants they put together. So I wanted to cut through this. I want y'all to think a little bit on this stuff and see what fits our community. Just said, I miss anything here. Standards, these are all the standards. Support the businesses, the village, because we're gonna talk about that more, economic development, where we already hit that a little bit. This is a big deal for us, entertainment areas for the city, you know, and I think, you know, with High Street coming online, all the stuff, Campus 244. So y'all remember that area over there before, when it had the different businesses over there, had already peaked out. So we've had the benefit, we being, y'all are in the chairs you're in now today, with that stuff really changing and going to the next level. And that stuff will be there for the next, 50 years. So the other stuff was about 50 years old, I believe, when it shifted out. We've also broadened our liquor, drinking, personal services, entertainment uses as well with our new the cup. What do we call that business? We have the sticker on the cup and all of it.
Entertainment district.
Thank you, ma'am. CARES 2, allocate almost half of all CARES 2 funding to small business grants. You know, we jumped on that right from the beginning, and for all the other elected officials, you know, the mayor was heavily involved in getting some of that stuff off the ground as well as y'all were. But, you know, she worked closely with staff to get those things moving and setting the vision of how we wanted to go with that. And also created a local incentive program to recruit larger businesses, maintain quick permitting. We've already talked about that as well. The entrepreneurship items that we have, strategy and collaboration with Sandy Springs, Sandy Springs and the PCID and all that. Brookhaven to a lesser extent, but we're all just right there together in terms of the way Dunwoody and Sandy Springs operate. I have monthly meetings with Sandy Springs, and Michael Starling has them probably more often than that, of the business opportunities as well that we have in that area. Our traffic patterns are married together, the business patterns married together. There are some differences a little bit on some of the land use in that area, but outside of that, we're very pro-business in the proper areas where it needs to be. Update sign code to allow for more development-wide flexibility. We also have redevelopment target areas for the vibrant mixed uses. Some of this stuff is repeats. I don't want to go through it too much, but we have modified our codes to go through that as well. Making it happen, use CARE funds to support outdoor dining amenities. Here again, that's an award-winning type thing that we did there. To come out of COVID, think outside the box, and that was an excellent thing to do. And actually, in the for the outdoor dining stuff and some of our the outdoor tables, dining areas, things like that. That's something I want. I talked to the mayor about when she does her introduction to the Georgia City County Managers Association meeting in the fall. I want her to really talk about that some as well. Just so you all know, that conference is coming to Dunwoody. I just went to the one in Athens. They are all excited about coming to Dunwoody. They said, "Oh, y'all got this, y'all got that, all this stuff. Brook Run's excellent." It's just, I'm like, that's nice to hear from among the peers. We don't hear the same thing when you go to GMA.
Who is that?
Georgia City County Managers Association. It's about a 200 person organization, and they're going to be at the Ravinia. There is going to be ground zero for that at the conference center, and then that'll be there for the course of about 3 days in the fall. It was a big deal to get that. They said when they were looking, they said Dunwoody was it was an automatic choice for them almost. They were very excited to come here, as were we. We put together a good package for them to look at. Georgetown Gateway Project, here again, that's a fundamental change that's happening over there. That is of course it's going to take a while, and we're going to talk about that some more during the retreat. This the length it takes to get projects done for various reasons, but I do want to talk about that some more. The Shamwood Dunwoody Road, the village there, the streetscaping improvements that are going to happen there. Street standards for jet ferry. These are just things that are upcoming. And more with Dunwoody Village. You can see the village is mentioned numerous times throughout, as y'all know. It's a major item for us. The citywide trail master plan will be completed this spring. That's through path. As y'all know, we brought them in to come up with some different ideas and see what the bottom line is there for that. See if we have buy-in from the community for that. The Ashford Dunwoody Trail, of course, we had our last week groundbreaking for that. That's gonna be an awesome item to get in. And especially with the restaurants, one of the funny things, as I was talking to the GCCMA folks, was I said one of the tours we're going to do is a walking tour to the restaurants from Ravinia, the walkability to there, down to State Farm, down to Campus 244, High Street, Jitminia, down there, and then take the other route down Ashford Dunwoody to the future trail, go to the restaurants, the new Buffalo Wild Wings, Lazy Dog, and then go on down towards the Quick Trip. for those restaurants. A lot of, plus don't forget the current restaurants that are already there. So it's really cool, and they were very excited about that. Another walking tour of Two Bridges Park. You know, you look at all these things we got just right there in the district, and that's why we use, you know, the funding, CARES, and then future funding, hotel motel, to do those things along with PCID funding. There's a lot going on in that area. But that goes right here. This is what we're talking about here, which is the sidewalks, safe streets, all that goes right along with that. We want people to be safe walking those areas. Expand parks and green space. This is another one of our goals. The Parks Department's done a great job in getting the attention of their statewide organization. You know, winning the marketing award and the GRPA District Agency of the Year for 21 and 22. And y'all know how that happened, don't you? On the 21, 22, you don't get awarded it 2 times in a row. But the first time we were under 50,000, the next time we were over 50,000. So we won the different categories. It was kind of funny the way that worked out, but a very good feather in the cap for the city. Financial stability. And, you know, in the parks, we did adjust the rental revenues for our parks and also increase the sponsorship for large events as well. Coming up just in a few weeks, month or so, is the first city splash pad. I think that's an excellent location where you'll put that, and I think it'll be heavily used in that area. The Veterans Memorial at Brook Run, you know, here again, that is it's going to be renovated. We also have the Vietnam veterans portion that wants to go in right below that. It'll be at a lower level. You know, the Veterans Memorial up here, Vietnam will be right here, you know, kind of like the flag. You have to have the main one a little higher. So that will be right there. That's all privately funded. On the Vietnam piece, there's county money coming in as well for the Veterans Memorial redo. Vermac Road, and you know, we put some more money in there to have accessibility to go and start it out. People can enjoy the park as is currently. And then begin construction of the more construction at Brook Run Park this summer. Encourage residential building. Let me back up. Encourage residential building development to allow all walks of life by adopting universal design, senior income-based housing, 55 and over communities. Here we can go back to the housing choices that we have. Cultivate and expand access to arts and culture as part of what makes Dunwoody special. You know, and as y'all know, this is all upcoming. There's gonna be a lot of stuff, just so you know, in the next year or year and a half that's gonna come along, which is the mural. And you heard Canton talking today about some artwork they were doing. One thing I like about Canton, and I'd like to get y'all's feedback on it at some point, maybe after this presentation, were the banners they had up on their light poles. I thought it was really cool. It has their new feeds. It just makes you feel like, hey, I'm somewhere different. You know, collaborated with Discover Dunwoody and the Dunwoody Development Authority to financially support tree gun. And then public art on the Womack Road and the Georgetown Gateway. That was a major initiative of y'all's as well. Expand economic development, including efforts more into placemaking. That was a big keyword that came out of one of our past retreats. Approved the public art implementation plan and installation of public art on traffic signal boxes. Here again, things to make us unique. I think if you do that along with, it's up to y'all. Some people may think the banners are clutter, clutter light poles. I personally sound like them, but that's up to y'all and what we want to do with the community. The EV post we put in at City Hall. So people, and also other city facilities, and people can charge their electric cars. Yeah, when you pull in there, I don't see your car one day. So let's see how that goes. The front, we are talking about the front yard tree program. Tree City, Bee City also. This is always a big thing. There was when I came here, the sustainability portion that the city does, efforts are great. You know, with the e-recycling, the household hazardous waste, it's a very popular program still. We're having those at City Hall now on the weekends, as y'all know. Planting 1 new tree for every tree removed on a city project, and then prioritizing the modes of transportation. So one thing here, leveraging the location, the 20-year vision for economic development. You know, the Edge City piece, that's something that's new. Of course, any plan you do, you know, it's always hard to determine is it gonna come to fruition or not? Does it need to be updated it needs to be updated every 5 years. Keep it a living plan, otherwise it becomes a stagnant document. Development Authority, the High Street Campus 244, mixed use developments. I'm really excited about the Campus 244 as well as High Street. I like 244 because it's a retro. It's a retrofit of an older building, reuse, and it's a major footprint. So that's going to be really unique. That building sat stagnant for a long time. And now it's coming back right there, walkable to Mora. And we have a great partnership, as y'all know, with Ann Hanlon over at the PCID to help get everything done. By the way, PCID wants to partner with us on more and more things. So part of our vision when it comes out, how do we want to leverage our money? They have money they want to put into Dunwoody. We're ready to do it. Part of it is, of course, the Ashland Dunwoody path. They're putting money in that way. And that's the show there. This is just a quick recap. We wanted to share it because what we did is we said, after talking, I'm rehashing what I said. After we talked about Canton and their 8 tenants and their roadmap to success, we said, all right, what do we have that would compare? This staff can't write those. We can write them with y'all's direction. We need direction from y'all, the community, and different things like that. This is kind of a boilerplate to get you started. You can pick off different topics and say, these are our 8 things we want to do. How do we want to wordsmith it? I know that's not part of today's retreat, but we do want to talk about it. Maybe that was something major. I'm going to yield to you at this point.
Okay. So questions for Eric? Anybody? Raise your hand. Okay, I have just a couple. Now I have to read my writing. So in the one about neighborhoods, you mentioned the code enforcement, and in our retreat, was it last year, we decided to add a 3rd code enforcement person. Do I have the timing right?
That's right.
So do we have data yet, or when can we expect data to show whether it's, and how do you measure like whether it's effective or not?
I'll have to get you hard data on how it is. Okay, I'll tell you this. I can have
We've
Richard.
been able to, first let me ask you a
Yeah.
question, we've been able to keep 3
Yeah.
for the year, okay.
Yes, that has worked excellent, and it's given us the opportunity to really expand our enforcement efforts. We have a very stable staff right now in that, we had a stable staff years ago, and we had some turnover in that department. But part of the biggest thing that we've talked about, I've heard y'all talk about in the past, is tracking, we have a habitual violator. It could be something as simple as the grass is too high. Well, that's fine until the winter, and the next spring here it comes again. Every year the neighbors is aggravated to the neighbors. So this is given, it's just the ability to track that more effectively. Shane in the code enforcement is doing an excellent job as leading that department and leading that division. And hopefully y'all are here and get feedback. If not, please let me know, either now or privately, and we'll make those adjustments. But I'll get that data. I will send that, we can send Richard an email and he was texting. He'll be here tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'd love for him to, just hit on that during his presentation.
How are we keeping up? Like, are we right? Who's right?
Sharon.
Last year, did we write things on the board of what we were gonna?
We did.
We wrote them on the board. We're not doing it this year. So,
You can.
So one of my-
Take a pen, because anything that's made, I was making all that.
I'm happy to do this.
Code enforcement, and the 3rd officer and the effectiveness.
sure, so I can't speak for everybody else. One of the things I'm finding with the emails I get about code issues is that we come by and we cite them and then we never communicate again. So the emails we get 6 weeks later is, I told y'all something was wrong and so came by. And so I don't know if other people are having that experience. Well, yeah, it was like, about the other day was, they're waiting on the court date.
Okay.
So.
That's what you want to call it.
No,
Again,
to-dos.
got it. I guess a question I have is whether or not we're communicating well enough with people about code enforcement complaints, not necessarily just the recipient, that's one thing. But if I call it a complaint and it looks the same 3 weeks later, I call in another complaint potentially, or I email my favorite council person or mayor. And then somebody has to say, well, they have a court date. Should we look at how enhancing communication? So that the person who made the complaint knows what to expect. Just because what I find, I can't speak for anybody else, and I don't know if anybody else is getting these emails. What I find when I get the emails is they're already aggravated. They think the email I got the other day, they were so mad. And then as soon as Shane or Richard were, because I don't know, as soon as I forwarded it to them and they answered, they're like, well, the court date's in April. So should we have a system in place where people can figure out, they've taken the ownership to file the complaint, and then
you don't know.
they don't know. So if there's no change, if there's a change, if they get.
So would this be a tracking system?
Yes, okay.
Yeah, if they've got stats.
That,
Public use SQL fix, right, and see that, they can track SQL fix online.
But that's the other issue.
Right.
Like Fix has some tracking and some reporting, but maybe that's not perfect either.
Right.
And that's a system that their citizens are reporting to us and we need to.
No, and
Did
that's,
I capture what you want to see?
yeah, some kind of tracking
well,
system.
and Mayor, just under tomorrow at 1:30 under constituency
Yeah.
response, we're gonna hit some of that.
Right.
Because the C fix piece is something I want to address with y'all at that point with
Right.
Michael, because if there's an element we can be more effective in there, I want us to be, if that's the right software. If it's not, I want the right kind of, like tracking
Right.
software. Because part of that also goes into the fact, I want to be able to track y'all, if y'all's concerned a little bit more.
Right.
Effectively, we all can see it, so if one council member has something they put out, if we can put it in this system, show where it is, show it's tracked, that was another one said, hey, I got the same issue, oh, there it is, it's being tracked, it's where it is.
Right.
So I want, the software is out there, it's pretty primitive, it's not a big deal, but I do want us to have that, because that's important to y'all. It's
I just
important to
think
me.
that for the residents and for at least me, but probably others too.
But this
that would-
tracking systems for
So like
residents.
Jerry Penn gives really
Because
big
they-
kudos to Shane, which is, she says he's the best,
Right,
which is great. That's really positive feedback. But she understands enough about the process to know that if Shane shows up and cites somebody, there's the next step, but most people don't even know somebody can cite it. And so then they sitting there looking at whatever the issue was. So, yeah, got it.
I can add something just that code enforcement process is a little slow. And those, sometimes they first give them a chance to
Yes.
fix it themselves,
Yeah.
to give them a warning period
Yeah.
of time before they sign it, and then the court date's usually, several months away. So it does take some time. It's not gonna be fixed in most
Right.
things in a week.
Right, and to be fair, most people wait a while, like they said, they'll look back and say, I can't believe it's been 3 months since I first emailed.
So you keep trying.
If we could elevate the conversation aside from code enforcement, it really is citizens are engaging us on some specific issue. It's the tracking and following up of all those issues.
Right.
And then from an elected official, what visibility do we have or could we have to look at the tracking of any interactions with the city? And what is the feedback mechanism? And, okay, so,
Two residents, obviously.
yeah, it's resident action, it's calling about subject acts,
Got it.
right? Code enforcement is one of them. There's a plethora of others.
And SQL Fix has a back-end monitoring software where you can see how fast things are being closed and being done, and there's tracking. And I'm not sure, as a council member, that never gotten metrics on how well the system's working. And I would even ask that the audit committee look at something like that. They're more financial, but it's still customer satisfaction from there.
That's why I hesitate.
And, from a reporting,
Right.
from an elected official perspective, the only access I have to any of the systems here at the city is email.
Okay.
So should we have access to a dashboard to look at metrics potentially? Or how can we,
Okay.
how's that work?
well, one thing I will say, so it sounds like this is a tenant of sorts performing.
Yeah, customer service.
Customer service, we'll expand on that, I like where y'all are going with it.
But I think it would help bring the temperature down in some situations, if they could see what was happening, even if it's just whatever,
Sure.
yeah.
Got it.
Could I just have another quick procedural one? Do we have an agenda for today and tomorrow of the topics that?
Yes.
Yeah, is that?
Yeah.
you have a
Well,
handout
and
of
look, well, Sharon, I can tell you what, wrong.
that? Well, you have,
No, it's not printed.
It's not printed, because,
We
well,
want flexibility.
right,
okay,
but just for today, it's a great question. So today, Dunwoody's roadmap, which is what we're doing now. Public safety is the next thing Chief Grogan's gonna go over next, once we're finished with this first topic. The American Rescue Plan, ARP. That was Jay's presentation. I'll take it over from there. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Rob, you're doing that. And then committee education acknowledgement, and then, the way we do our zoning hearings. I'm doing that along with Tim Bernard. That's today, and I'll go over with what tomorrow, we're gonna kick off with bonds and several other things, village. Pedestrian safety, communications, and constituency response. Customer services tomorrow.
We built in flexibility
Yes.
if we to change something.
So that's a rough I really appreciate that. Yes.
So what we're talking about now is an entire topic tomorrow.
Yes,
That-
customer
yeah.
service is.
That's correct.
Okay. Right.
Anything else on this topic? This was kind of rehash a little bit where we are, where we're going.
So what I like about what Canton does is that you can look at their budget and see how it fits the priorities. And like, the goal of Edge City is to hand it to developers and say, this is what we want, this is our vision. And so their approach is interesting because they hand their whole thing to developers and say, tell me how it fits. So, I mean, not that we have that much development happening, but you just never know,
Well, it's a different type of job.
right?
That's right. So, and those are very important things, but somebody, in a way, we have a higher risk game, because when something comes to us, we don't have the flexibility to make a mistake, so to speak, of what's going to go on that piece of dirt. It's such a limited property. You go ahead and it's all redevelopment, it looks like. You really want to have the right thing. That's why you don't spend a lot of time on your zonings and to make sure it's done right. Okay. Anything else on this kind of introductory things? But I do want y'all to, throughout the retreat here, think about those tenants, think about how we want to shape it. I do like a lot of stuff Canton did. And Kelly, talk a minute, just if you would, about Canton, Dunwoody, what may work well in one versus another.
Well, one of the things that I'm very fond of saying is that each city is unique and different. So I don't think Dunwoody would want to be Canton any more than Canton would want to be Dunwoody. They have very different cultures, they have very different demographics, they have very different. I can't imagine. I think what the city council is saying is that with the 8 areas of roadmaps, and they did an excellent job with, I mean, my background's in marketing, so from a PR standpoint, they did an excellent job developing the wording around that so that there's a feeling around it and telling the story. And I think that's excellent. But I've looked at obviously the documents last night when it was sent, and I looked at a lot of the items that y'all are doing, plus knowing Dunwoody fairly well. There are so many amazing things that you have to tell a story about already. I think it's really kind of, in my opinion, looking at what you have, but I would say that if you've seen one city, you've seen one city. Right? So you wouldn't want to say, well, Indianapolis must be exactly like Dunwoody. If you've never seen Indianapolis, we would never do that. So I think that embracing the fact that you have such unique characteristics is really what's going to take you further down your own roadmap for success, and not worrying about what their 8 are. I think the concept is amazing, and I love the way they've written it out and how they're marketing it. Stellar. That's a marketing.
Right, I like that it's clear to staff and constituents or residents, the council, that these are the buckets, whatever you call it.
Yes.
That every dollar they spend, every decision they make is marching towards this set of priorities.
Are you comfortable with me adding to our list here that's just alignment of budget to goals and priorities, right? That's what, because you mentioned that a couple of times.
We do, I just don't know that it's clear to the
But
public.
publicly aligning
Right.
budget to goals and priorities.
Speaking of priorities, this was a good overview. Public safety was intentionally put first. Talk about this other stuff first, but public safety is intentionally first because it's in my perspective, it's our #1 responsibility. And, but we will, when the study is done, we will do some kind of something, business, depends on agendas. When the study is ready, we can have a more in-depth, we'll have an in-depth workshop on what that says. But I thought there were some really important things we needed to talk about, so that's why I asked.
No, that. Yeah, and Mayor, you're right, the study, Mayor alluded to, John, was a very done study we're having on the police department. And the chief was very excited to get that study kicked off, because she's been here since 2008, since the beginning. This study allows take an in-depth look at the department. What can we do better? Staff always wants to know, what can we do better? What are we doing right? What can we improve on? I love the idea of what we said about the budgetary piece, because a lot of what we do and the goals we set goes back to the budget. We can only do what's within that budget and those priorities. So that study should be a draft version coming up in May, and then in the summer will be the final version. Then we'll have a meeting to talk about that at that point. Chief, you're up. You heard the clicker. You can present from over here on this side.
Ginger, also the cam for the microphone is picking everybody up.
Yes,
It's good.
you have somebody back at City Hall checking.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And they said it's good.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate the opportunity to
Sorry.
speak to the council on a few items related to public safety. The first is going to be the EMS update, and I want to, for the benefit of everybody here, I wanted to walk you through kind of how we got to where we are a little bit. Back in May of 2018, the council declared a medical emergency because of long response times for ambulances. Then in a little bit later in May, a notice of the declared medical emergency was shared with the Region 3 EMS Council. We asked them to look into this, trying to get our own zone or some kind of change. They appointed a 5-person ad hoc committee. As a result of all that, the city entered into in October an MOU with DeKalb County to provide EMS services to station. There's a bunch of points in it, but the two main are that they have a 90th percentile response time of 9 minutes or less to the ALS calls, which are really important ones. And then 90th percentile response to 15 minutes or less to the BLS calls, the less important medical calls. There were some other requirements as well. And they also stationed particular ambulances in Dunwoody, 3 at the time, which before we really had none stationed there. So that was a kind of a great benefit. And this was going on while this ad hoc committee was meeting. And then the ad hoc committee finished their work, really no recommendations for, improvement. DeKalb was working to rebid their contract for EMS services. And AMR was the previous vendor. AMR got the contract. They kind of done some requirements in that contract, and also allowed for cities to be able to contract with AMR and pay them separately for additional services that they like. That wasn't in the contract before. So on July 8th of 2019, we passed a resolution declaring DeKalb County to be in breach of their MOU with the city, and have continued to work since then on issues related to the MOU. In 2022, the 90th percentile response for ALS calls was 21 minutes, just over 21 minutes. And that's extremely high. And then for BLS, it's 23 minutes. And this has increased probably fairly significantly since COVID.
Yeah.
And we continue to receive complaints about long wait times for ambulances. Sometimes these come directly to our department. Sometimes they come directly from police officers who are out there waiting for an ambulance. Sometimes they come through you, through constituents or through citizens that who complain. And then on several occasions this past year, no estimated response time could be given for an ambulance. So they couldn't even say, we'll be there in 20 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever, because all ambulances were tied up on calls. And so in a couple of cases, several cases where it was really some exigent circumstances, we asked for AMR in Sandy Springs to come, and they did. And as you know, or may not know, Sandy Springs pays extra to have ambulances in Sandy Springs. And so we've been fortunate. Every time we've requested, they got there in about 5 minutes. And so they've been very helpful for us. So there's some contributing factors, I would say, for the delays. The size of the zone, it's huge. The geographical challenges, the challenges with staffing, since COVID, they're experiencing like most people. The wall times at hospitals, that's seen an increase. And then there's no direct funding is being provided by the DeKalb County for ambulance service. So before they had the ambulance service internally, and they had however many millions they spent on that. And when they contracted out and did not provide any funding for the ambulance service. And I know Eric, when he was in Douglas County, they supplemented the ambulance service over there with county funds.
And it was county, just so you know,
Yeah.
it was, I've talked about this, it was county run. And one thing we talked about a lot on the ambulance fees chief, and you and I have talked about this for many years at this point, is each jurisdiction is different. It was kind of interesting with the thing today, how quickly that ambulance responded to the incident that we kind of witnessed today. in that community there. But on the county side, when I was there before, we funded it ourselves. It was self-run. So it was, never felt like it was out of control. Here it's for us, there's no control over the ambulance service. It is out of control for us. We're not getting the level of service that we need. What we had there too, we had our own ambulances. We ran, operated fully with a backup service if needed, rarely needed. The chief had on a pride of not needing the backup service. I'm not saying not calling them, they're called automatically when they're needed. But he would always say, hey, we had to call them back up. In other words, felt like, hey, here's the reason why. Do we need to add another ambulance to the system? For Dunwoody, 50,000 people, we're not a rapidly growing community, and we're 13 square miles. Pretty easy to serve, right? Hospitals are right there. Douglas County, you got to go to Grady. That's 25 miles into town and then back. Talk about wall time. We don't have those issues. So it's a very simple process to run for Dunwoody. Is Dunwoody big enough? Do we have enough money? Is it a priority? I mean, those are things we have to figure out and see what we are. Right now, our hurdle is we can't get rid of the EMS council and the way the state law is written. It's not just a unique problem to Dunwoody. It is a metro-wide problem, but it's also a problem in different parts of the state. On Monday, we have a meeting with the EMS council subcommittee. Just so you all know, I think I sent you all an email on it. A few weeks ago, the chief and I went, after I made a phone call to the EMS council, say, hey, we want to go before EMS council and ask for something. And they go, it sounds like you need to reestablish a subcommittee. I said, if that's the right ask, it was on the agenda. They understood it. It was ready to go from that standpoint. The chief and I got up there and just spoke on a few notes that we had. They heard us loud and clear. The first meeting is next Monday. And to start that, this time the difference is going to be this than last time. Last time, we went to the EMS council, I think it's 2018.
Yeah.
So we went there. And this time we have the other cities behind us. With us, all the cities in DeKalb County for the most part. But the main ones are the ones on the north side that I was concerned with. We're on the north side. Brookhaven.
Last time we were by ourselves.
We absolutely.
Totally by ourselves.
Yeah.
This time.
Yeah.
Doraville, Brookhaven, and sometimes Shane.
Right.
are on the same page.
And Decatur's gonna be there this time too. And remember, Decatur's unique, they run their own fire department, but they use DeKalb ambulance. So we'd all like to have our own carve outs. And we've made suggestions, and the mayor's made a suggestion to the CEO. You need to divide the county into, let's just say 3 zones. And we don't care who your provider is, but this zone, and this zone, there is some connection. One thing I want us to make sure is crystal clear to the EMS council, and I'm saying this to y'all and for those listening out there as well, is we said, hey, we called Sandy Springs ambulance to come in. Some people take that for granted. Oh, they should come over there. No, it's a different zone, not our rules, EMS zoning rules. It's a different zone, and it's kind of a semi-private carrier. And the reason I say that is because they've paid them extra to do it.
And that's gonna end maybe.
Yeah,
So
there's some troubles coming
trouble
there.
coming there.
It's the whole industry
Right.
is challenged, not just that particular AMR, but the entire industry with a level of work. But Chief, wanted to lead into that because that's a huge issue we have. Monday is the day.
Did you read my presentation?
Mhm.
You just went over. So,
Mentioned about it.
so February the 9th, the city manager and I, he just told you, attended the Region 3 EMS Council meeting. One of the things that surprised us really was something we've heard in the past. They said, when we complained about the response times, they said response times are really not the main factors in determining outcomes. That was their point of view. They said there's all kind of literature on it and things like that. So needless to say, we do care about it. And I understand, it's like a burglary that happened 3 days ago. We don't need to run lights and sirens to that as a police response. Same thing with ambulance response, but you do, when there's ALS calls, when people are in trouble, you do need to get them there quickly, and it does affect the outcome.
And can I make one other point, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Is it may not affect the outcome, but DeKalb County is short 120 fire personnel. So the fire personnel and potentially police officers are stuck
Right.
until an ambulance gets there to transport or treat the patient.
Absolutely.
So I've made that point in the email. I think I sent that.
After that meeting, Chief Fulham asked to meet with Eric and I, and we met with him and a representative from AMR to talk directly to them. This was at our office. And we kind of, went over our concerns. They talked a little bit about some things that they were doing. And one of the couple of points that Chief Fulham made was that most calls are BLS calls and not ALS calls. That they only transported 55% of the calls. And that only about 8% of the calls that are transported, they run licensed sirens, just to, kind of give you a perspective of overall, not just the calls in Dunwoody. So some of the things that they're looking at doing is they have 5 mobile integrated community health units that are in the budget. He said he hopes that goes through with the budget. It's in the budget. They're gonna put these out in areas and go to places where they can maybe keep people from getting in the system. That's the whole idea, is to reduce the calls. They want to rebalance the types of ambulances that are in service, more BLS and fewer ALS ambulances. They want to continue to use the nurse navigator program to divert calls. They've had a lot of good success. I think they diverted 10,000 calls in 2022 out of their total. They're trying to deploy more its own ambulances. I think right now they're running about 5, and they hope to have that up to maybe 10. They're using dispatch health, which is I'm not totally clear on exactly what that is, but it's something that's in addition to nurse
I don't
navigator.
think that's actually up and running yet.
Yeah, and they're working with hospitals to improve wall time. And then, the AMR is trying to improve pay for ambulance workers to attract them. And, some of the workers they get end up coming from fire departments, even the CAP fire, going to AMR because of the work hours and things like that. Some of the things that steps forward for us, we're working with the CAP fire to implement the nurse navigator program through Chatcom. I actually had a Zoom meeting this morning at 9 o'clock with Chatcom about this. It's not as simple as we would like it to be, because we're in a multi-jurisdictional dispatch room. So it's not just, if it was just Dunwoody and Brookhaven, it'd be pretty easy, because you change the protocol in the emergency medical dispatch and it works, except Johns Creek and Sandy Springs do not have that protocol. And so they don't like to do things, one way in one department and one way in another, because when you switch dispatchers around and call takers, it kind of can mess up the system. But we're working to look at that. And actually the person on the phone call from Sandy Springs said they're exploring nurse navigator as well. And they talked with John Creek. So it's something that's in the works. We're working to get that. They're developing what it would cost, which I don't think would be too cost prohibitive. Also asked for a new quote from DeKalb County for a dedicated AMR ALS ambulance to be stationed in the city of Dunwoody from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's the peak hours for ambulance service. They haven't got us the redone quote, but they did tell me how much it would be. The rate that's in the contract is $566,684 to have one ALS, and I know the council. Yeah, and I know the council did budget, I think, 600,000 in ARPA funds. So
That's right. Well, and what the chief, just so you know, under the ARP, yes, we budgeted 600,000, but we didn't have a number at first. When we originally came back, remember the original proposal? Yeah. The original proposal was 1.2 million, and that was for 2 ambulances for what was the time?
No, that was probably for one
120. That's right. 124-hour, and we said, that's not important for what we're trying to do. So we looked at the 12-hour piece. It's still a higher rate. The problem is the standard is what Sandy Springs is paying, which was a phenomenal rate they got. And there are different politics that were involved in that negotiation with AMR and the North Fulton EMS district.
And I'm sorry.
And when they renew that, it's
Right, it won't be the same.
It was high. If I remember correctly, it was high to begin with, and then when they saw the reimbursement rate from Sandy Springs was higher than the county as a whole, it dropped some.
That's right.
I have no idea what that data looks like for us.
Right, that's right. And so ours is a true cost. This is what it's going to cost to do it, and that it includes. So it's more of a realistic what it costs to run an ambulance, which is not outside of the realm, but it's 12 hours a day, right?
Yes.
And it would be the peak 12 hours.
Yes.
And it would be dedicated to the city of Dunwoody. In other words, run the call, certain calls.
It's outside of the zone, the DeKalb County zone, So if they have to run somebody to Grady, they don't get diverted, they come right back to Dunwoody. They run somebody north side, they come right back to Dunwoody. And so, I think it could have a, a pretty positive impact. But we only average about 10 calls a day anyways. And, about 300 a month, 320.
Yeah. And Chief, that was gonna be a one that went to specific, I mean, it wouldn't be for just any call.
Yes.
It's kind of reserved for the more serious calls.
Yes.
But that's a judgmental on, somebody has to make that judgment.
Well, there's a classification in the system that what's an ALS and what's a BLS call.
Is there reimbursement then back to the city for the use of that? No. So if
That's
it's reimbursement, it's, yeah, I get the reimbursement.
So, yeah,
If you pay the $2,000,
No, that goes to the ambulance.
that's right. That's right. So the city's responsibility would be that, let's just use a rough number, 600,000.
Yeah.
But we pay for that service. We don't see any return on that.
Well, the return, it could be the reduced response.
right,
time.
Well, no, absolutely. There's no financial, no monetary.
There's no
return.
money, it's all, we're paying the full cost and they're getting the benefit.
That's correct.
so
And Chief, you said there's 10 calls a day, that both levels, ALS.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And yeah, it's a split between the ALS and the BLS.
So. The difference between now and 2018. With DeKalb specific is that we couldn't get the other cities.
That's right.
Because they wouldn't cooperate, they weren't interested. Whereas now, when I asked the mayors to identify their top 3 problems. In 2023, it's there for most everybody. And so that's good, but only if the county takes action. And so in 2 conversations in the last 4 months with county leadership, they had both said to me, tell us what the solution is. So I sent an email. I strongly believe, and it's not, so I saw on social media that somebody they had died because the ambulance didn't get there. I don't know where it was. But it probably wasn't in Dunwoody, just because I knew where the person lived, but it was, so it's, I keep stressing to the commissioners that this is happening countywide.
That's right.
And they should care more, like they should be bringing it up at every commission meeting. What are we doing about this? Because my point is, and I made it in the email, I think I sent you all the email, was that going to AMR, the county is spending $8 to $10 million a year. They have the money now. If public safety they claim is their #1 priority, then spend the money. You can attract more fire people, so,
Yeah.
because so anyway.
Well, Mayor, you're spot on, and part of the
But-
oddity to me is from a county standpoint, running the county budget for many years. Ambulance is a service.
Right.
Your taxpayers pay for that. It needs to be put into the budget.
Right.
It'd be almost like I was telling the chief, we're not gonna fund you. Good luck with your ticketing. And we hope you can get our tickets to support your officers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they've asked them to do,
Right.
is they're saying you gotta operate based on the fees you get. The fire department will supplement it because it doesn't get you fees. But they need, DeKalb County, if they're not gonna help us, or EMS council's not gonna help us, DeKalb County needs to supplement their budget, $2 million into there to help countywide. Because as Ken was just, we were talking about, Ken still right now, learning the city a little bit more, but it is a countywide service.
Right.
And we're just one element of it.
Which means if it's a countywide service, it's not subject to SDS. Service delivery strategy, it's a general taxation on everybody. So if a citizen in Dunwoody is not being provided the service, or if you have to spend money to supplement the service on money they're already providing, there's an argument there's an equal protection violation. Because you got similarly situated citizens in DeKalb being treated differently with the tax dollars. So it's not just a service issue, it's where's the money issue. So I don't know what Sandy Springs did. I know y'all there's some DeKalb County weird legislation that y'all are one of the few counties has in the state of Georgia. But I think it has a dual component. It's not just the service. It's getting the money back that you're already paying for a service you're not getting. So it's 2 components there, if you think about it.
Right. And it is a statewide issue now, so
Yes.
there was legislation introduced in both houses of the legislature. That had it moved would have allowed cities. They were slightly different, but they pretty much would have allowed cities to have their own zone, and I'm oversimplifying it. The Department of Public Health isn't real fond of that, so they're motivated to find a solution. GMA is put together or is putting together a committee. I think I'm on it. And, you know, the Department of Public Health, they like to say that the response time, they can have no standards because every city is different, every community is different, but what we kept saying is when they don't come, that's not acceptable. And so it doesn't really matter what we think response time is, when they simply don't show up for big accidents. We're really talking about the person who calls, say, a stomach virus. It's probably gonna be okay. I'm talking about the motorcycle accident with the motorcycle crash. Where the motorcycle driver was at fault and he wasn't wearing a helmet. And that's one of the times we had the custody experience.
That's right.
So we had a couple of other quick things of note is when we talked about doing this, you know, one of my questions was with AMR, well, if the city does this, you're gonna be able to staff it because they have trouble. He said people will jump at that because it'll be one area, they won't be having to drive all over the county, they can go work a shift here, and he said they won't have any problem with that. And the second thing is for this meeting that's coming up on Monday, this ad hoc committee, I've reached out and Brookhaven's coming, Chambly's coming along with the mayor there, the Doraville police chief is coming and the mayor, and the Decatur fire chief and police chief are coming. And I'm reaching out to some of the other cities, the few remaining small cities, and hopefully we'll have a lot of them there to represent us, because as the mayor Eric said, last time we were on an island by ourselves. And so it helps to have other people there with you.
I have a couple of clarifications.
Sure.
For the 2018 ad hoc DeKalb County Committee, you said that they came forward with no recommendations.
Well, they didn't do anything. They
They weren't
didn't.
empowered, it turned out.
Yes, I mean, they basically said it was kind of out of their control. They couldn't really do anything, so they didn't make any recommendation that we would have liked them to make.
No pointless. Okay, and then. So DeKalb County used to fully fund the ambulances, and then when it went to AMR, all that funding just went away.
Yeah. Because it was during the recession and they didn't have the money,
Okay.
so they cut that from the budget, but the
That's
money
right.
is back. That was the point of the email I sent.
That's
When
right.
you have the money now, and you need a backup.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to make sure I understood.
Plus of that, they got COVID money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They got a lot of money. for
Right.
first
It
response.
breaks down.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
no,
It's
Right.
well, to me, it's what I call a hot wire of the budget. I can do it, it's designed to do it for 1 year. During the recession, 2008,
Right.
okay, hot wire it, get through it, but then put money back into the system. You know, that's what the gap has been.
Well, the back door of this is this, they go to a private provider.
Right.
Because of relationship. My wife has been in an AMR ambulance, and we can talk about that offline without the media here. But.
We are not doing that.
But what I'm not talking about is a group, I'm just saying, I'm not gonna. talk about
Right.
But what I want to say is this, the private provider is first trying to build the insurance carrier, the health insurance carrier, to get as much as they can. So it's really a back door, your health insurance is paying for most of that ride, or a portion of that ride, and you may get a back bill, I don't know if they do in the cab. I can tell you the Fulton County bill, because I've seen one.
So you're paying about $2,300.
So you're paying taxes, you're paying health insurance, and then you're getting bills. That's what's going on.
It already reimburses at a much higher level than some other parts.
no,
It's,
no, you're, yeah, good.
so multi-city approach to EMS County, just to keep us on track. I know we're running about an hour behind, sorry. Do we want to, Ken, you mentioned funding, Stacy mentioned funding, do we want that or do we not want to?
No, it was just-
It's in the letter I sent.
Well, and then, just to put on there,
Yeah.
funding, you know, and we want more county funding.
Correct, yes.
And I told that to the meeting, if there, if you have any questions later, please ask me, glad to tell you whatever.
Any other questions about EMS?
He knows this isn't my name.
Yeah.
Just a comment, I mean, I think we kind of made it clear, but this to me is an absolute priority.
Mhm.
Right, I mean, this is like the basic services that citizens expect, no.
Well, it's a public safety issue, the system's broken,
Right.
and this should not be operated as a
So,
for-profit.
do you know that if we started our own fire department tomorrow in Georgia, we could not have our own ambulance service, that's why we cater. So there are some cities that were grandfathered in whenever the rules changed, but everybody else, like College Park, they bought these emergency vehicles for their fire department are an emergency vehicle, I can imagine. But they can only transport if the person's gonna die. Otherwise, they have to wait for gravy. So that's the stuff GMA's got to
Very
say,
very territorial.
right? That's-
Just one comment I do want to make as we're moving forward on this, I am in favor of supplemental service with a big if attached to it. If we're actually getting response
Right.
times improved, my concern is we're supposed to have vehicles stationed in Dunwoody as it is under the contract. And what's to stop AMR from just diverting those vehicles elsewhere? And now we're paying to get the same or perhaps even less service than we're getting today. I mean, when we rattled the Sabre back in 2018 and the cab was gonna put all these additional conditions into the contract with AMR, and our response times have gotten worse.
Well, but they did get better, they improved through 9.
And I understand that COVID was
Right. But
an unanticipated,
they've gotten so much worse, they're, COVID, we're kind of through with the, who knows, but
right.
it should be
So-
improving.
Chief Fulham had assured me that nothing would change about the current agreement, the MOU that we have, that the ambulances would still be stationed there. And of course, we could tell if they weren't based on the distribution of the calls, because we get a report each month that shows the ambulance and how many calls they went on.
Right.
And part of the problem right now is that usually about a third of the calls, 100 calls, are dispatched to ambulances other than the ones in Dunwoody, because the ones in Dunwoody then get tied up, and so they have to, get somebody else. And so with this ambulance, we're gonna have somebody that's coming back to Dunwoody repeatedly. And so I think it would improve our response time. To what degree, I don't know.
So we can do it as a pilot.
That's right, and it's budgeted,
Right.
it's budgeted,
It's an ARP.
right, and that's the next presentation, but yes, the chief point, I mean, no, you're perfect,
Yeah.
because it's just a line item in the next presentation. But if that's something y'all wanna do, we really wanna broach that today, and then Monday, this coming Monday, we'll report back after that subcommittee meeting.
So I'll close with this. I think the Department of Public Health is kind of freaking out because it's not just us. And one of the things they said was that there's a process and the cities don't use it, which is not true. And so I think they're motivated to help us find solutions because they don't want the atomic option. The legislation was dropped by really prestigious, respected state reps and senators. And there's going to be a study committee that'll on this issue, but in the meantime, we have to just keep working on it. But I think that hopefully we'll have better responses. One other point, sorry, I forgot. Eric was able to get this in front of them so quickly because as soon as he told them that only about half of our calls routinely come from the ambulances or routinely answered from the ambulances based in Dunwoody, she goes, well, this is old business then. And so she didn't require the whole going whatever and starting all the way over and showing our data. And so that was good news.
All right, we'll move on to the next topic, which is mental health clinician. Y'all, just a little update here. Hopefully all y'all are familiar anyways, but on May of 2022, you approved a contract with Viewpoint Health. We hired a licensed behavioral health clinician. It was extremely effective for the period of time that we had the person. In the 2022 legislative session, SB 403 was passed. So local community service boards became responsible for establishing co-responder programs in their area. Viewpoint Health did not service our area, and so they decided they had contracts with several departments, and they decided they were going to get out of that business because they could not apply for grants for a contract with Dunwoody because we were out of their service area. And so they notified us of that in November. And then the clinician that was hired was pregnant and she went on maternity leave. And so we really had nobody after that. But a contract with the DeKalb County Community Service Board is pending. I think it was read recently, and I think it's up for approval on the consent agenda at the next council meeting. So hopefully it'll be a contract between us and Doraville and the Community Service Board. The person will be primarily stationed in Dunwoody, but will respond to Doraville when needed. We'll kind of rebalance the cost of that. Right now it's based on population, but we'll do it based on calls for service as we move into it and see, what the workload is for that person. Any questions about that?
I think I said at the council meeting that once they're up and running, it takes a little while. If we could get a report X months from now about whether we ought to go back to, whether we would benefit from a person's full time for ourselves.
Okay. We'll definitely do that one. The next item is public safety trends. Talk a little bit about crime. That may be a little hard to see, but I wanted to kind of show you this. And what I did was to had our crime analysts to look at 2019, 20, 21, and 22. And the right column is the percent of change from 19. And to kind of show you all the trends that we're experiencing in some areas. So as you can see, crimes against persons is our up category. We're up significantly between 2019 and 2022. It's actually increased almost every year. Homicides are up 50%. Rape is up 350%. Robbery is up 8%, and aggravated assault is up 127%. Now, when I say percent, it sounds, oh my God, that's a lot. You got to remember, we're talking small numbers. So we don't have a lot of crimes against people. I don't want anybody to get that impression, but what we do have has seen some significant increases over the last several years, really coming out of COVID. A lot of the aggravated assaults are people who know each other, domestic related, interpersonal kind of issues at hotels and different places like that. You know, we've had 3 homicides each of the last 2 years, and knock on wood, we were able to solve all of those homicides.
And so, since it was only 3 in 2022, it was the young man on the access road was that 2022 in front of the shopping center apartment complex? Or was that
in 2022? No, 2022 we had the double homicide.
Right.
And then we had the lady who was stabbed by her brother.
Oh, no, that's right. So 21 was the infant.
And 21 was the infant.
And the young man, there was a.
No, the mother and sister.
Was 21. Okay.
Anyways, so property crime, we've actually seen some, pretty significant decreases. Entered autos, people breaking in cars down 40%, shoplifting down 33%. And so it's kind of weird about shoplifting because a lot of that's driven by the loss prevention people that work at some of the companies. Since COVID, a lot of them don't have that staff. And so I don't know that we're having less shoplifting or if they're just catching less shoplifters. Also, Walmart has implemented a program where if it's under a certain amount, and they will do some diversions and not call us. And so they've done that internally, made it a policy of their department. As far as entered autos go, so since many moons ago in the 30s, crime has been tracked through what's called UCR, Uniform Crime Reporting. And so the big push has been to move everybody to NIBRS, which is the National Incident Based Reporting System. And Georgia had a deadline. We moved up, probably a year or 2 before the deadline. The United States the federal government has a deadline for all states. And so the difference is this, under UCR, if someone killed somebody, kidnapped them, robbed them, punched them, and then killed them, the only offense that would be counted would be the murder. You wouldn't count the other offenses, you count the highest level offense. In NIBRS, you count each offense. You have 1 murder, 1 kidnapping, 1, assault, 1 robbery. And but the other big difference is this: if it's a series of events that are tied together under NIBRS, it counts as 1. So if we had somebody under UCR that come in when we had UCR and broke into 30 cars, that's 30 different incidents of entered auto. Under NIBRS, it's 1. So you might, it's because they're tied together, they're considered done by the same people, it's a series and it's really 1. So just to let you know, some of that decrease may be because of NIBRS being instituted. I wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Doesn't really make a difference much in other crime, but in serious crimes like that, it does. If there's a string of burglaries that happen one night, it'd be the same kind of situation. There has been an increase, pretty significant increase in parts from autos, which are usually catalytic converters, are getting stolen, sometimes wheels, things like that. And then we've had, of course, y'all are all familiar with the mail theft. We've had a pretty significant increase in that over time, although as I understand, they moved the mailboxes, which is, I think helps. But also we did have somebody break in the mailbox. A lot of it was phishing and using a key that was stolen. But we had a couple of people come by and actually break in it. And fortunately, there was a camera on the mailbox. And so we were able to figure out who it is. And so now we've got a suspect that we're working on. And hopefully we'll have that person arrested soon. A few other things.
That person pay it with a key.
There's a lot. I mean, there was somebody we stopped that had 150 pieces of mail in the car. None of it was our mail. It was stolen from somewhere else. I don't know why you run around with your car with all the mail still in the car, but anyways. We've seen a pretty significant increase in narcotics arrests. Also, a significant increase in people fleeing and eluding officers, so running from us. It's up 173%. That's primarily because of flock, because we're stopping people that are in a stolen car and they're running. In some cases, not all cases, but we got somebody last night with a stolen car.
Chief, can you back up on the narcotics?
Yes.
How do the dogs impact that number?
That's probably contributed to that increase as well, because they're able to, detect narcotics. And so from a traffic stop in a residence, different things like that. So yeah, I think it's had a positive influence on that.
Is on the narcotics, chief, I know at the federal level, there's these levels of classes of categories, and marijuana is as bad as heroin, right? Are we tracking, is a marijuana possession and track the same as heroin?
Well, I mean, we track it.
And the reporting under narcotics.
Yeah, it would, if it's insane.
So whether they get an ounce or less of marijuana, or they've got 50 pounds of heroin, and just so you got a number.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think, from reality, it'd be great to get a more of a granular perspective on.
I mean, we certainly have the stats to be able to break it down. We had an arrest the other day. It'll be on the daily, the monthly next time. But we were working with the DEA and executed a search warrant I think it was at an apartment, and recovered 3.5 pounds of marijuana, about 70 something ounces of mushrooms, several other drugs, and some cash, and I think there was maybe a gun there as well. And so we're able to, make that arrest. So, unfortunately, a lot of that has happened as well. And then lastly, I put gun crime on there, 118% increase. So we're seeing more and more crimes involving people with guns on these aggravated assaults, or people being killed, things like that.
So does that mean, like the shooting at the mall, which maybe it's not three, it doesn't matter. Does that count twice then?
No, that was one incident.
But so does it come as a gun crime or does it come as assault?
Well, it was an aggravated assault,
Right.
but we're counting it as a gun crime.
Okay,
So
so you.
gun crime is not a category. I just covered that just so we would be aware.
That's valid.
Yeah, it's not a crime category. That's just, yeah. And all three of those folks have been arrested.
Right, thank you very much.
Yeah, they were all arrested. And I wanted to kind of give you all this perspective a little bit. Over 80% of our major crime, this crime listed here, happens in perimeter. And the majority of our crime happens in business areas and apartment complexes. So commercial areas, apartment complexes. And our residential areas are rarely targets of crime. And usually if it is, it's minor stuff, somebody, breaks in a few cars, crimes of opportunity, damage to property, things like that. Honestly, domestics related to things like that. But most of our crime happens in perimeter, and over 80% of our arrests are people who are from somewhere else other than Dunwoody. Where they travel to Dunwoody to commit crimes.
So with the domestic stuff going up, with the 80%, was it 80%, 90% before the pandemic, or is it?
No, it's old rated, it's probably closer to 85. It's been about the same almost the entire time we've been a city. And so that's just a couple of, kind of trends I wanted to make sure that you were aware of when we talk about crime. Any questions about this?
I know that crime nationwide has been trending up. Where do we track in relation to that? Are we under the curve, above the curve, consistent with the curve?
So we're actually fairly flat. When you look at 2019 to 2022, we're kind of about 2% less, close to flat. So we saw a pretty significant decrease, especially in property crimes after because of COVID, and then we've seen a kind of a steady kind of increase each year. Most of it's related to our crimes against persons, but there's fewer numbers of them. So when you see a significant decrease in shoplifting and inner auto, then the increase in crime against persons doesn't account for all that decrease in the crime. So we're trending with everybody else in the increase in crimes against persons. Some places have experienced a huge increase in property crime as well. We haven't seen that, but we're kind of trending, pretty flat. I was on a call the other day, and I was telling somebody about this earlier. The Atlanta police chief was talking about their homicides are down for the first part of the year, I guess first 11 weeks or whatever, 50-something%, and which is a great trend, and shootings down 23%. But one of the trends that they've seen is some of y'all may have read some of the issues related to Kias and Hyundais about their vulnerability to being stolen. And they had 50 of those stolen in 2022 during this time period. They've had 460 stolen. Wow. In this time period. And I checked on us. We only had like one Kia or Hyundai stolen last year and none this year so far. They hadn't hit us yet.
I know we're running tight on time, so.
Just a real basic question. Do you have the tools and staff you feel necessary to address this, if the crime issues?
I'm going to talk about staff.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
We'll keep going.
All right. So here's trends related to staffing. I thought it'd be important, and certainly it'll help us kind of get a little bit of understanding as we move forward with the Barry Dunn study when they did it. So this might be a little hard to interpret, so I'm going to try to interpret it and give you the information. So the first line is us, our population, how much Part 1 crime we had in 2022, and the number of officers we are authorized. And when you look at these different departments that are there, Johns Creek, for instance, they had 68% less Part 1 crime, but they have 14% more officers than we do. When you look at Chamblee, they have 25% less Part 1 crime than we do, but they have 12% more officers. Smyrna PD, the same, 30% less crime, 53% more officers. Brookhaven, 3.7% less crime, 39% more officers. Roswell PD, of course, a huge city, huge department. They have 12% less crime than us and 150% more officers. And then Alpharetta PD, which Alpharetta PD is a city that I look at because they have a mall like we do. So they're, it's a little bit of apple and apple. They have 42% less crime, but 76% more officers than we do. And then Sandy Springs, they used to be way higher than us in Part 1 crime, but their trend over the last number of years has been down, and ours has been kind of flat, and so they're kind of catching us. So they're only have 10% more Part 1 crime than us, but 131% more officers. And then Marietta is the same thing. They're only about 3% more crime than us, but they have 117% more officers. And if you look at the far right column, it shows this is kind of a workload indicator, if you want to look at that. Part one crime per officer, and we're at 24.8, and as you can see, nobody's really close to us. The closest is Brookhaven and Chamblee. So that gives you a little bit of idea of the workload, and of course, Barry Dunn's doing an analysis involving all the calls. But what this really does, it reduces the amount of time that officers can be proactive and doing enforcement efforts. It reduces the positive outcomes we can have with LPR data, because we get hits and no officers available, and so we don't get to catch them. And so those are some of the I guess the outcomes that happen because of the staffing level that we're at.
And Chief, as part of the very, when we get really into this with the very done, we can get into more of the nuances of what a potential future looks like for
Sure.
structural.
Yep.
Chief, if you look at the officers versus population, it also tracks to a certain extent as well. Right, I'm just looking quickly. We have 64 officers per 51, 73 to 2. Some of them are higher per 1,000.
Yeah.
Why Shannon? They're old cities and they.
But what's the daytime population?
You know what I mean?
I think one of our calls needs to be after very learned study.
Want to throw this out, 'cause this is the first time I didn't have like an advanced preview of this presentation. I'm not sure we can wait for Barry Zone on this issue because budget happens before. And so what I might ask Eric and Chief is to see, as we're go into budget development, that we get feedback on some of this from them to begin with.
Very done. BER/UNF. Drafts is coming in there.
Talking about daytime population, I found out, Mr. Malls had 12 million people. That's their number from that.
A year.
Right. So a lot of.
Mayor, you were asking for an estimate in advance of this.
So
Yeah, before the budget.
before the budget, their draft is May, but it didn't sound like the final presentation to us would be August or something.
That's what I'm guessing, because May is the draft.
Right, so but we need it.
Think about July.
Yeah, we in
We
July.
need it
Yeah.
before
The
that.
earlier the better.
That's the budget, before the budget committee convenes.
Right.
Well, that's.
And these are the officers are the number that each department is approved to have, correct?
That's good.
What's our staff? I'm sorry, I missed it. How many are we down? Just 2?
We're down 2 right now, and but we're about to promote 2, so
Yeah.
we're looking at 2 spots. And we have a couple people in the pipeline, so
Yes.
I talked to the chief of the camp,
Uh-huh.
and they have 50 something officers.
Right.
And of course, they have about that much of the crime that we have.
And the population's less.
Yeah, it's 37, it's about the same population as maybe a little more than Chamblee.
Yeah.
But Chamblee has, of course, more crime than Canton, but forgot what I was.
What
What
I
did
think,
he say about his officer vacancies?
Oh, he had 6.
Chief, one thing to keep in mind too, remember a couple of years ago in the budget committee, we added a couple of positions, remember the floating positions back when we were fully staffed? We removed those because we weren't fully staffed any longer, so I didn't want to carry them on the budget, we needed the money elsewhere. We also allowed the chief to reallocate those positions, remember, create this extra sergeant position, stuff like that, but once we're fully staffed, I'd like to come back to y'all and say, hey, because what we don't want to do is if we have somebody else in the pipeline, I'd like to go ahead and bring them in.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, for
So if
sure,
y'all are okay with that, it'll take a budget,
right.
I'll have to get the finance to do it, it may not take a budget amendment, there's always money in the budget. Because we're not fully staffed, but I would like to, in theory, have that, go back.
And
That's great.
And the thing that we certainly need to think about is, High Street's about to go online
Yes, yes.
in at least the first phase in January of next year, and then the other project over there as well.
You just mentioned perimeter mall number of visitors. Are they doing enough for their own security, safety? What are they doing since they're budgeting and their program, their officers?
Yeah, I mean, they have a private security staff, not armed, and so, you kind of get what you pay for related to that. But they do have quite a few folks working to be invisible, they're checking their parking lot, they're in the vehicle running around with a light on it.
Do they have LPRs on that vehicle that they drive around?
They do, we're trying to get them to go with block, but it around the mall, as the mayor and I have talked a couple of times, and we're in the process of looking at drafting an ordinance requiring LPRs for certain locations, commercial locations, and even maybe gated residential areas. And of course, once we get that drafted, we'll send it to legal to let them review it and everything. We think it would be beneficial not only for the property owners, but for the city as well.
I just want to make sure that they're doing their due diligence as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a dog that comes in periodically that checks for drugs and things, so, it's hard to say they're doing as much as maybe we would like, but they're doing a good bit for sure. Yes.
So on the surface, and I know this is, 40,000 feet looking
Sure.
type of information, but certainly appears we're understaffed as a,
Yes.
and not just in filling open positions, but as far as the number of allotted positions. So obviously, there's a big budget component to filling that. However, from an operations and logistics standpoint, is that something that you gradually ramp up? Is it like, if we decided to add 20 officers for next year, is that something that's a realistic, because it's not just quantity but quality, and I know that you and your department do a very good job of selecting the right officers, not just getting someone with a pulse. So how do you effectively grow to this size?
Well, I mean, frankly, that scenario you described, it would take time. It wouldn't happen in a couple of months.
Right.
It would probably take a year or longer to fill those positions.
Would that require some sort of additional strategy or resources to achieve?
Well, certainly a strategy, because we would, right now you only have a few openings, but if you had a number of openings, then you'd want to broadcast cast your net wider, try to get, people to come in, because you need a lot of applicants. Definitely. Yes, Joe.
So I appreciate bringing in the area down, because I look at the holistic viewpoint, and I get the budget cycle, but there's nothing for us doing a mid-year budget correction once we see the plan and have a truly dedicated set aside. This is a day-long subject, right? This deserves really detailed conversation. So I appreciate, I'm just standing by looking forward to further engagement to see what we can do.
And I think we need to know in July. So if very done, if the draft is due in May, I think they should have the final.
We can get that for you, because by then we get what we need for what.
Hopefully, for sure, we'll have an idea in May.
Well,
There should be something under-
the draft typically is going to be, we're looking at it from a grammatical or a factual standpoint. Did they say this? And no, that's not actually true. We do have this or whatever. So really, it's more of a fact checking kind of thing to make it. No. Well, actually, the Sandy Springs Crime Analyst put this together and sent it out. And then when I looked at it, I thought it would be something good to share. I actually put it in this format, and they didn't have the officer. They just put out the part 1 crime numbers for everybody in the area.
I just have, so on this ordinance, came up the ring.
He's coming back.
Okay, on this ordinance. So one of the things, like the other day, one of the things I wonder about is how we make sure that our commercial properties are doing what they're supposed to do. And I know some of that may show up in the very done report, not sure. But so the question is, along with an ordinance of, if you hit this statistic, you have to put in the cameras. Should we also look at it even before a statistic is hit?
So, yes, well, there's this whole idea of crime prevention through environmental design and septic. And so you can build into your code certain requirements related to lighting, related to landscaping, related to gate access. We have a gate access ordinance,
Right.
Related to cameras, related to us having access to the cameras and LPR. You can build those into your codes. So that when a development comes in, they have to, comply with
But
it.
then are you allowed to require it going backwards?
So
But we did with the camera, we did with the,
Let me know. Okay, so, okay, so the fire department and police department on the gated communities, so, you know, apartment complexes. We had to put an RFID type thing in, where our car folks have gate open, the same fire department and agencies. Certain area, so we don't have to crash the gate, the damage RV and damage the gate. So we made that retroactive. What we're asking here is whether they're putting in a flock camera, if it's a high crime, or having to put in some kind of other security device, I'll call it, tracking device, so to speak. You know, can we require that if we feel that business is over the top in terms of number call?
So the answer to that question is it's more complicated than just a sentence together. But generally speaking, you can't pass laws that work backwards. You can only pass laws that affect future conduct, because it's an ex post facto law otherwise. But regardless of what you said about the gates, the question you asked is more complicated.
Right. Okay, so, okay.
And if it's a partnership, in other words, if they want to do it, then they can certainly work with
You can encourage it.
Yeah.
I was just asking Chief about perimeter CID, because I know that'd be something of interest.
Yeah, and our issue
For funding.
is apartment.
And you used to work with her too, didn't you? You? used to work
Ann's
with-
on my board, so I'm sure I'm throwing her under with us, but I work on CID, and we are already working with them on plots.
You know, I think they do plot cameras. I think the issue is that in parking lots, you know, outside of public right of way.
Right.
In apartment complexes where they're having a lot of this crime, like the other day, one was like 20, I don't know, I saw them next door or something. So,
Yeah, we have about, I would say 5 or 6 of our apartment complexes already have, LPRs. As we're connected to, and then about 3 or 4 neighborhoods that are, you know, some of them are one-way in neighborhoods, so they have a lot of cameras up as well that we're connected to, so.
It's such an important topic. I want to make sure it's plenty of time, and then we're running up against, I keep looking there.
No,
We're fine.
Yeah.
That's why we built flexibility.
Okay, so
Sleeping here, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I'm good.
yeah.
All right.
So no, these are excellent topics to generate, I mean, to come out of this meeting, because it's a huge part of what we're saying in kind of an introductory statements earlier. You know, as we're building our community, public safety has got to be number one. I've always said that people, they'll tolerate traffic, but they won't tolerate crime.
Let me, from a takeaway here for number 5, a head count, not just a head count, can we see what the board structure should look like too? So how we are today, right? Here's all the positions and here's the numbers, and then what would be like a proposed board. Yeah.
Mostly, it's just additional people on our teams, our control teams. Although, we did have it in the budget for a sergeant, 3 officers for the special investigations unit that was funded through ARPA. And then y'all had changed that, to do drug investigations, also repeat offender kind of work that we have, a lot of repeat offenders. But most of it will be, generally speaking, will be, increasing. So we have more officers on the road and that sort of thing. I think another thing worth mentioning right here, since we're talking about this topic, is when you see, and I know over the years I've made council members say, hey, Sandy Springs is doing this, can we do this? Or somebody's doing this, can we do this? The challenge for us is it's very difficult to add stuff to what we already do. And even with Canton and some of the things that they're doing, you know, they're a smaller department, but yet they probably have more resources to do some of those things than we do. And for instance, Alpharetta does a lot of different things because they're staffed at a level where they can do that. And so I think that's an important consideration as well, not just operationally in responding to crime or being proactive or, you know, these LPR hits, but also on the community engagement side of things, having the resources to be able to do that as well.
Very similar in population, but nearly double the officers. Makes a big difference.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. And just so y'all know, the study that will come out like. We've had a very good relationship working with that crew. I think Chief, your state team has been very impressed with them and their knowledge and the teams that they brought in the city. So I think it's one, as far as the studies we've done over the years, It's one of the more involved, I'll say that. I'm very happy.
Yeah, Deputy Chief Carlson, the point of contact, and he's about weekly talks to the lead, Michelle.
Yeah, I was gonna pull it up. I got it. I guess. You'll pull it here. I'm gonna get a clicker from you. Okay, we'll go on into the next element.
So everyone want to stand up for a minute?
Y'all.
Move, stand up for moving is needed. Stand up with me, I want to get up here or anything.
Don't you remember when the moderator, people always come up and make you do that? I always hate that. Remember, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. Always funny.
You'll probably have better attention if you were like, just stand.
I know, right. And we have some food, some refreshments over there.
I can smell that.
I know, it's actually very good. I had to sample it to make sure.
It's
I
okay.
had to sample it.
You know, we're always looking out.
Yeah, it's- I'm looking for that.
Is it not working yet? It's only a few slides and then Rob's up after me. Yeah, I think we're good on time. That was a very important topic.
It will help you. There's a little bit of, sometimes they need to get some time. So the question is. On the side, yeah, it wouldn't allow, it's so. Yeah, I don't, the new years, I have a very funny.
Yeah. That's why
No, they did it big.
I'm so used to sitting for hours on it, and like, it's.
Yeah.
It does not phase me out. I mean, it takes me a while to. Projecting. Not performing, my brain is done, but my body's like. Okay, let's do this. I know, so I was into it, you know, I didn't know, I did 10 hours. This is what I thought. I had the car people down back. I like that y'all are putting it up there on. What kind of thing is that? So I kind of feel like.
Again, I just filled it up, reset the mileage. So it was getting 24, 25. Yeah, something, yeah, it's 99 technology. The battery motor is better. 30 miles. Again, I got it at the very end of the production. They started to explain. So they worked out some things. Well, I'm not sure. I didn't accept. I took out almost everything. The 4x4 sports stickers. The only thing I left was the color. That's stickers are.
Everybody else is back.
We're still, we're not good.
Just like, wait.
I'm sorry. It's good. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's right.
We're in it.
That like just.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Right. So it's over here, not back down. And we're ready, so.
Okay. Start back up. Okay. I'm giving, all right, fine. Yeah. We're gonna start back up. I'm gonna go over the CARES, the ARP update. This is just a few slides, talk about the dollars and some of this, everything we were talking about. They're all, there's interconnectivity between the presentations, which includes what the chief just went over. So what we had here is, for the CARES 2, this is our status, what the money is remaining. We had about 5.275 budget, spent just under $5 million. There's about 308 remaining in that overall budget. Everything from hazard pay.
308 obligated.
It's yes and no. It's in these different categories, but you can still, within the budget, you can still move the money around. Like the art seed money, we spent all of that. Human resources, we spent that. Brook Run lighting, so that's a good example. So we had 800,000, 784 is what it costs. So there's a little bit of money left over, stuff like that. The biggest one is entrepreneur support with 123. That's the one we spent the least amount in. And then the alfresco grants, we still have some money there. These other ones, you can see there's hardly anything in.
But Michael's still trying to spend.
Oh, absolutely. And he'll be used. So the next piece, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, the next piece is the ARP1 and the ARN2. So the ARP1, remember, this was the big transfer, remember, to ARP2. And that was something that we did. Our stuff is extremely transparent, everything we've done, talking to other cities and counties and the way they've done it, than theirs. I think I love our model better because we took that money, moved it to here. But we also had the Two Bridges Park, which here again, that was a very unique piece in time, that we were about to kick that project off when the hotel motel revenue went to zero, really. And then that project is underway. The wayfinding signage, there's still, that is an ongoing piece that we're doing there. Stormwater programs, here again, that's a major budget item, and that stuff is kicking up more rapidly every month. I sign up on a lot of the different projects that come along. Some of them are big enough to go before y'all see a lot of them. Carl's sitting out there.
Eric, what's the expiration date for ARP one, for the stormwater? Is there an expiration date?
End of 24. No.
It
Yes,
was-
I think it's the end of 20, not the end of
3-year,
23.
right?
I'll get you exactly. Jay is my guy for that exact
But I
number.
think it's the end of 24.
Wasn't it a 3-year?
Yeah, I think it's the end of 24.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, so we're about halfway through it, basically.
Yeah, but if you look at the numbers of what's spent and what's remaining.
Yes.
That 4 million, I want to make sure that we're on track. to spend that
Oh,
appropriately.
absolutely, right. And we will. That's a good point. Let's, Sharon, can you make sure we make that point? I want to get an answer for that.
On the stormwater, it sounds like that,
Well,
no.
remember, part of that, we had reserved in a way for
Right.
a piece of property we were getting some work on.
Right, I understand.
And so we can reallocate it too. But
I
we
just
will
want to
be
make sure the expiration date is known. and
Absolutely.
The money's allocated.
Yes.
For some of this, so didn't we kept it in this budget, but we actually used the ARPA money for other allowed purposes. And so it was kind of an accounting exercise to make sure that we had more.
Well, everything has to be, yeah, everything's accounted. Remember, this is hard money has to be spent in those categories. This is the 10 that went down here into this 2. So that's already allocated down here. This has a lot more flexibility in this portion than in this portion.
The direct assistance could come, like, if we get to John's point, say 6 months from now, and we're really struggling to spend it on stormwater. You know, to get it out fast enough, we can reallocate it
That's right.
to. Direct assistance can come out of the original ARP. I know it's more paperwork and stuff, but it can come out of that.
So, Mayor, to your point too, this money, basically, these don't have a timeline on. These are
Right.
already spent. This was the timeline. This is spent. So it's spent from the seat because it was spent here. Here went to here. So the direct assistance, as you mentioned a second ago, we've spent, 25% of that. Some of the bigger items on this that we were just talking about was the public safety and EMS. That's the $600,000. When y'all ready to pull the trigger on that, that money's, what was it, Chief 5? What was it? What was the number?
6.
Yeah. So that will be gone there over that course of time. And that's per year. This was, right, that was a yearly cost. Because we weren't sure what the cost was going to be. So you may end up using some more of this money from other areas, which you do have to run it more than just a 1-year pilot.
Quick question on the public safety and mental health, since the contract has been, and we're gonna do it with the. Is that number right? Or they paid, or they paid for it? Okay.
That's right, we have,
What, but we would have paid the one, I mean, the other one more than $5,000 or nothing.
we didn't pay them much, they were, I
It
mean,
was short
we probably
term.
paid them more than that. If it's, I can't really see it from here.
Yes, 5,000.
It's 5,000, no, we probably spent more than that, they were here about,
Aaron.
Oh, what's the note? Where is it? Oh, okay.
So,
Oh, here it is. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep.
Oh, there we go.
There.
blew mine up.
I know you.
Yep.
The latest invoice, so, okay.
but we haven't paid them since, probably November,
Right.
since the clinician went on maternity leave, we never paid them.
But the new agreement that we're gonna sign, the money will come from this as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so we have also, see, we have this contingency, the 1.2 in contingency here. And then you'll have some other things that will roll up into it. Grant writing, that's still kind of on hold, ready to go when we're ready for it. Safe streets construction and then position, those have now kicked off. The position has, the construction will come in a little bit later. We talked, okay, the public safety lighting, Chief, is there anything you want to say on that piece, on the lighting?
I've worked with Michael, we're working on, I guess, a list of places to do
Right.
that. And he may speak to
Yeah.
it tomorrow.
And if y'all have a list, and you kind of came up with it, Michael's working on that, but if there's somewhere that y'all want to identify, you hear from your constituents more than we do. We being staff, if there's somewhere that troublesome, let us know.
You're still talking city right away. We're not talking
Yes.
anywhere else.
City right
away.
Mhm.
I hear it.
Yeah.
That is.
And so, and then the LPRs, I can't brag enough on those, and I think, Ken, as we look at that, let's see what else we can do. Just think about it, as chief, you come up with other areas we'd like to put them as a public-private partnership, because I'd love to have some of those, like around the ball, on their property.
Look at what DeKalb is doing for anyway.
Social service incubator, that's a big one. That's been kind of Jay's baby there a little bit, and the mayor, I don't know if you want to talk on that one, any?
No, it was just, we're gonna buy a building and, we are a small staff, to Chief's point, it's sort of the whole city. And so we just need to take time to figure it out, and I have a thought about maybe combining the recreational equity money with the building money and seeing if we can find a facility where our most underserved residents live that could offer both a building for nonprofits to
Mhm.
use and some opportunity for recreation, and we just need to do it.
Right, we have something in mind. If y'all, are y'all in theory ready to speak on that? I mean, we can move forward with that. Yeah, look, that's a major deal. Because I wanna get that money allocated, because that's something we've talked about for a while. So it's the social service incubator. Go ahead and set a timeline.
Purchase a building.
The other piece of it, and I want Ginger to speak to you briefly, is cybersecurity. We put $1 million there. How are we feeling on that?
Invoice at this point, roughly $50,000,
Mhm.
but we have pending, I wanna say about 600,000 to a lot.
Right.
It's just taking a long time to get equipment obviously in hand because of delays. So we're probably about 650,000, I think, right now. Spent in that budget, and we have plans for the whole million, just haven't gotten there yet.
Mayor, do you want to speak on the recreational equity? Was you?
Well, I don't, I think we maybe are listening to today's presentation. And trying to figure out how to better connect with our underserved communities. It might be a wise idea to purchase the building, which is what we envisioned for incubator, along with recreational space like fields or
Mhm.
green space, or somewhere we could add green space. So we'll have to see what's out there.
And this is some money that, I mean, since it doesn't have a specific earmark, it's for recreational equity, so we have a lot of flexibility as we move into our continuous park plan in Vermac and Austin.
Well, it's not going to Vermac or Austin.
Okay, you don't put it,
It's going to Vermac.
okay,
or
fair
Austin.
enough,
It's
fair enough.
gotta be on, it needs to
On
be,
the other side,
it needs to be in the qualified census tract.
that's what I wanted to get to, so,
So add
So,
recreational
yeah.
space.
and that's one of the main points. It is the location of that, for that recreational equity.
But again, it doesn't have to be green space either, if it's a building
Mhm.
and it offers amenities
Mhm.
Yeah.
outside.
Right.
Classes, whether it be recreation, thousands.
Just right.
Like a community center.
Right.
Yep.
And community center space, yeah.
Green space can be awful small too. I think of like a futsal field that is a small turf field, you can put a parking lot.
Right.
Well, and that's why I wanted to, I started at the bottom and wanted to work up, because is there anything else on here that we want to get clarity on? Because that was a piece, I mean, y'all are all on the same page on that. I just want to clarify what we're looking for on those two, because those are bigger items. The cybersecurity worries me less because we have a plan for that. But on the social service incubator and the recreational equity, are the two that I really wanted to make sure we get in the direction on.
Yeah, and those are the two that were most important to me, because I know that we had an idea for that, but there's been no movement.
Right.
on it. And I understand that staff has got a lot of things on their plate right now, but I want to figure out a way to move those forward.
Are we comfortable with this?
Yeah, so let me see what you got. So the recreational equity and the social, yes, those are major items. Okay, perfect.
I would say possible recreational equity,
Because it might not work.
it might not work.
Okay.
But to further define recreational equity, and could we combine it? Or
Mhm.
do we have an opportunity that's recreational equity but not social equity?
Well, and that's, like I said, that's one of the main things that I enjoy getting out of these meetings, because when we get back, we will get you an answer, to get that moving. Current status. Okay, this is on the money that's been spent, allotted. And so, can you all see that okay? Or it's on your screens?
It's not.
I mean, I don't want to go through it line by line, but you can see what's remaining. And just so you know, like just this week, Jay went out, he loves this, and his has kind of been, he'll go out and check the people. We want to make sure there's full accountability, full accounting of everything, that they're spending the money correctly. Somebody says, hey, they bought a freezer, we want to see it, that kind of thing. And so this program is working very well. The way y'all have allocated this money to be spent is excellent, in my opinion. It was exact design when this money was handed down from the federal government.
What's the timeline for your spending?
Well, I think it all has that same window of time, which was the 3-year period from the beginning.
Can't remember what we told them, but they can't get more until they spend.
That's right.
what we've given them. And I think I can't remember, Jay will remember maybe, but I think what we said internally is that they're not spending it by the end of this year, because remember, this is the money that doesn't have the deadline.
That's right.
How we set it
True.
up. is that we would go to them and say, look, are you really gonna be able to use it? Because if not, we want to release it. So for example, I don't even remember a few meetings ago, Jay provided us with a list of one agency's expenditures. You know, it was rent and gas cards and food. I can't remember what all was on there. But it was one of these agencies that really, that was not their business model, pre us providing assistance. And so they pivoted beautifully and reported beautifully to Jay, like, you know, they're doing everything they're supposed to do. And Jay's like, you know, they need to spend it so they can get more because they've done,
Yeah, right.
like they're doing a good job. So
It's late March. Do we know it, the quarter summer school?
I have a meeting with them next week.
Okay.
They moved Corners Outreach, which is really good news for them. They are apparently now in Cornerstone, what's called the church.
The church, the best.
Right, so they're now there. The front
Healer North Peachtree.
Healer North Peachtree, it used to be something Baptist.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Fisher Baptist.
And so they have moved there.
So they completely relocated. I know there was a new, like wrap of ribbon cutting.
Yes, no, well, they
grand opening.
bought a building in Gwinnett, so that's a separate program. They have a DeKalb program and a Gwinnett program. They bought.
Church.
Oh, it's just a ribbon cutting. So I have a tour next week, though, I think. Yeah, Tilly Mills. So they were on Winter's Chapel at the bottom of a shopping center.
Not a very good.
Not a very good location. So hopefully they moved all their operations to there. And actually, interestingly, just last week, St. Patrick's reached out to me because they wanted a contact, because they wanted to offer state. So anyway. Okay.
Well, Mayor, and what I want y'all to know is, if there's ever any of these stuff you want to look at, set up a time with Jay and or Richard. Richard Plato, and say, hey, we'd love to see any of this, but I will tell y'all, I mean, the way we've done the county, I'm very extremely proud of. Because I know there's been some other cities that have problems managing this money, and then I do have a lot of pride on the way we've done this.
I just see some have about, have only spent 20%.
That's right.
I want to make sure they're on
Yes.
track for spending it all.
That's a fair decision.
That's all I want.
Right, and it would be, I guess one of the questions for the chart thing is that if we could get an update on their, like, I know for Malachi's that their demand is up about 200% or something.
So you got, okay.
So.
Oh, there you go. I don't blame you.
Getting the money up fast.
Update on these.
Yeah,
R2 money.
So they don't provide direct taxes.
Yeah.
Right, no, I know, but they're, in other words, yes, they need to spend more. But like St. Vincent de Paul's and the ones that provide like rent assistance and stuff, see, I'm not calling anybody out.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the ones that provide direct rent
Right.
assistance, how can we help them? You know, do they need a part-time staff? Not from us, but can Jay rewrite and change rules that would allow them to up their staff so they could do more or something?
That's fair, and especially as this, now that the thing has a little bit of maturity on it, we can certainly do that.
So maybe update and then slash flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility,
Really,
a reallocation,
it's really, it's not the whole ARP,
Mhm.
it's
just some of it.
it's the nonprofit partnership.
Okay.
Or direct assistance, I think we call it.
Okay, you want to put the next one up, which is gonna be,
Nonprofit partners.
which is gonna be Rob. But Mayor, that's all I have on that, on the ARP2 and the ARP in here. But Rob, you're up. With your piece, then here's the little thing to drive it, you can drive it from there, or do you wanna come up here?
It's where, come on up.
Come on up, Bob.
You don't need to drive it.
I wasn't sure what was gonna happen.
Don't shoot David on the.
I just asked you.
Yes.
No. So look this up so people can actually read it.
Wait, is it on, it's on their computer too?
So.
You can zoom.
Don't y'all have-
You can make it.
Yeah, I don't know that there's going anything to scroll, but I got it just in case I need. So. Diversity has kind of been an issue of mine for a while, and I put a pause on it last year because we had a lot of other things to work on, so I talked to Lynn about putting it on the agenda. For this year's retreat. You know, we saw the stats earlier, the city is becoming more diverse. And so to me, I just want to make sure that we're hearing everyone's voice, you're hearing from everybody in the city. I want to make sure that we're serving everyone's needs. I want to make sure that the city is welcoming to everyone. And at least in terms of municipal operations, organizations that are more diverse tend to function more effectively and make better decisions. So I want to make sure that we're doing the right things within our city government itself to make sure that they're as effective as possible. So to that end, there are a couple of programs I'd like us to consider having some involvement in. And one is with the GMA. They have a new program for a certified city of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. This is a program that they kicked off last fall, brand new. So this would be kind of our chance to do in the first year of the program. It has a number of different requirements. Some are very simple, some are more involved. The simple requirements, we have to adopt 2 resolutions if we decide to pursue this, basically indicating that we're interested in the program and to commit to the program. We have to agree to some personal training, and not even all of us, just the majority of us. It's pretty easy to embrace calls almost every month. GMA also offers a course. It'll be offered this summer at the annual convention. To meet that, how do I scroll down?
I think somebody has to say.
Oh, there we go. To me, the most important part of this, though, is stakeholder involvement. We have to hold 2 meetings with stakeholders, basically to find out what they think, what they want. Just a discussion on how the city's operating, city projects, city services, where they could use some help, where they think things are going well, what they would like to see from the city. And that's kind of the crux, I think, that kind of drives where we should focus our efforts. They have different certification categories, workforce, housing, education, health, public safety, community economic development, municipal workforce development and employment, and stakeholder engagement. So that's a required one. So to me, at a minimum, I thought we could look at doing some stakeholder engagement this year and also committing to making sure that our municipal workforce has the right tools to make sure that it's diverse and welcoming. And that's honestly all you have to have for their entry level of certification. If we decided as a council to pursue one of the other areas, we could go for a higher level. I think that would be a great idea. I think it would also be completely justifiable to wait to see what the city meetings produce.
The surveys.
Community survey.
Community survey, or if we hold 2 stakeholder meetings, what feedback they give us, so that say next year, the year after, we focus on areas where folks are interested.
So is the stakeholder, is that people that we pick?
I
Or
think-
is it the usual?
The usual 15.
To me, they're supposed to be broader than just this. So to me, we would invite people that we know might have an interest and then open it more broadly to the community for other people. So if we know, for example, someone has an interest in a concern, we reach out to them. We know if someone represents a particular group that we know is in our city, but we don't often see coming to our meetings, participating in our boards. We reach out, who from you can we talk to? A great example to me, talk to Corners Outreach. Who in our Hispanic community should we be talking to and making sure are involved with these meetings? So I think we would have to be a little bit proactive to make sure we reach out to everybody. But other communities have done committees or task forces, and to me, you need to have a reason for that, rather than what can we do to make it better. These meetings to me seem like almost a more straightforward way to get to that. Just pull as many people as we can together, get their thoughts. The next year, pull them together again, get their thoughts again. And you need to do this every year, so you have to do a couple of meetings every year. So I think we would probably self-identify a group of really interested parties and stakeholders over time that would keep coming back. And kind of giving us thoughts and ideas to kind of improve the city and make it better. So that's one thing, and I'll let us come back to talk about that in a second. I just want to quickly introduce the other. And so this is something that Lynn directed me to last year, and that's a metro area program called the One Region Initiative. This is focused specifically at immigrants and refugees, people from foreign countries that have come, and just making sure your community is welcoming and serves those citizens as well. To me, this kind of if we decide to do something here, this kind of ties back into the GMA program. And so we could kind of fold them together. I just put some links on here. If you pull the packet out, you can go and look at the welcoming plan. It kind of talks about the areas that they want to focus on. Civic engagement, government leadership, safe communities, connection, equitable access, economic development, education. So I think we could, under one umbrella, we can kind of work on both. But one thing that does fall under here is what they call welcoming week, which is just making a special effort of some sort in September to show that your community is welcoming. I know that for the 4th of July parade, they used to do a citizenship service, for example. For new citizens, to me, that would be the perfect thing to schedule this week, just to show, hey, welcome new citizens to Dunwoody. So anyway, these are just kind of two different programs that I came across. I personally would love if we would pursue the GMA certification. I think it would. I think would improve the city, and it would definitely send a message that everyone is welcome to our city.
So you're willing to lead on this, correct?
Correct. I am absolutely willing to lead this.
Making sure.
Now, I think there would need to be, to me, some city staff involvement, and we may need to talk about for the public meetings. Do we want to have, for example, a facilitator, an outside facilitator, just to kind of direct and help the meeting flow. So there may be some cost in that respect. There's also a small fee, and I forget the exact amount. It's a few $100 to apply. So anyway, I guess I'll go grab. Yes.
The new Create Dunwoody executive director had talked about tapping into the Indian community, having a big event for them. And what we should be thinking about is double dipping.
Wait.
We could have an event and then also make it a welcome to America, or here's how your city works, or whatever, then we can have some of these at the same time.
Yeah.
So she's somebody to bring into the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, we've got a number of festivals and events that we already hold that I think would also help us.
Oh, yeah.
We could have some sort of city presence there to try to make connections. I mean, I think the AAPI festival is coming up later this spring.
It's a day or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think there's lots of opportunities to begin, even if we just start collect, I don't know how to do it, but even if we just start collecting emails or something, people who might be interested, or just making sure they're signed. And the big thing, I used to do it a lot more when I was a council member and when the pandemic happened, where I would make sure everything I went to, I had the way, I just usually did it on paper. Now they have a QR code to make sure they're getting our D news. Making sure that they're getting the information so they know when things are, so.
And there are some GMA staff involved with this
Yes.
program that I think we could probably reach out to and kind of get best practices and ideas as well. So I guess mainly what I'm looking for is, is there support to try to push this forward this year?
Yes.
I see nods.
All right, so next steps then would be
I think
to.
it's right here on the list.
Next steps would be to connect with GMA. They have an online form we can fill out. And Eric, I can, how to coordinate how we do.
Love to do it.
And we'll take it from there.
Hey, Rob,
Yes.
I was just gonna say, you might want to get a list from GMA of the cities that have done it already, and then that would give you somewhere. to-
Yeah, the thing is, the cities that have done this already are doing it this year.
Okay.
It's a brand new program. I know Decatur is going to be pursuing this.
Yeah.
But they also just in general have experience with how have communities done outreach with.
There was a pilot group or something. I don't know that they.
Well, I know they have a training for city leaders. And that started, I think, a year or two ago.
Yeah, there was a.
And then I
pilot
think this
group.
may have come out of that.
They're going to require this for grants moving forward as well, right? They're gonna tie up some of their grants.
I don't know. I just on my
I
own
don't think it's a-
thought this was a worthwhile endeavor for the city, so.
I think so.
But it certainly, I would think would help with our economic competitiveness.
Yes.
The idea that whoever you are, we want you in Dunwoody. So,
Thirsty makes you stronger.
yep. All right. let me give you back your-
Thank you. Okay, good. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Ginger, we have another presentation we're gonna pull up. then we're almost on the agenda, it's 5 o'clock, we're at 4:30 on the agenda, so we're fine. We're doing great on time as I thought we would. We would be, I knew we would put the hammer down here on some of this. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's the committee education. And there's 2 of them. Let's do the first one and then Ken has a second one. He's gonna go through. Ken may slow us down.
They're supposed to.
Wow.
Okay, so, all right, council, so I'm gonna run through some slides here. And then we're gonna maybe come back through some of them, just kind of hit different topics. This is an open discussion a little bit on this one. So our committees, and this is just a sampling to get people thinking. You have your planning commission, your zoning board of appeals, other boards and committees that you have within the city. You know, some of the issues we have, membership, y'all appoint the members, the mayor appoints the members. Y'all talk about them a lot and see who's on the committees. Then the attendance is an issue on some of them. So we want y'all to know, we may want to put some different rules in place for attendance, some rules and standards for training, some other standing rules, which is, those 2 things above it. Communication with council, whoever the sponsor is, the person I call the sponsor, the planning commission or zoning board of appeal, the sponsor is Richard McLeod. What other communications do y'all want? You hear a lot from those boards, but like some of the other ones that Sharon's over, or that you have, to keep in charge of, do you want more reporting? Some of them don't even meet because they don't need to, which is a good thing. The building, what's it called? The building and construction board of appeals. That's only if there's a weird appeal, as a, to a building rule. So it's a debate. Hey, can this frame be like this? I'd say it can be. Well, the code doesn't say, so they'll take it to the Board of Appeals and they'll go through it and examine it and say, okay, this is okay. Maybe it's a new type of materials we use. It's on laminate board or then something else. So who knows? So that's the kind of stuff they would do. Open records and open meetings. So you know how the open meetings are. Everything's an open meeting for the most part. And then so are the records. And Sharon's department does an excellent job on the records for anything before we charge all that stuff. The acknowledgement. Okay, what I mean on this slide here, the acknowledgement of the board members. What else do we want to do to say, hey, y'all are doing a good job? Do we want to pay some of them a stipend? I think the ones like the planning commission and the zoning board of appeals are boards that commonly do get stipends in other areas. Some of the other boards that don't meet very often, they can still have a stipend. It's only if you're in attendance and there's a meeting. There's no other way to do it. You don't get a monthly stipend if there was no meeting. Is there anything else? So let's go back to the bailiffs. What I want to do there, those are unpaid positions. Some of that kind of stuff is going to be part of the very done studies, how we do the bailiffs, how we do the court. It's going to come up with some other options. We're going to have some alternatives for those positions. And as the people that have been doing that a long time, that when the city first started, it was 100% volunteer. Some of those people are not being replaced. Like there's not as many people who want to do that work. Used to want to do it, but and the mayor and I have got to schedule our time. We didn't get a chance to do the holiday when we were worried about there was a COVID. If y'all remember, right before Christmas was a COVID spike, so we didn't do it then. But now that's the only thing we do once a year. And one of our open record requests from local citizens like, hey, y'all spent $800 taking the group to Fogo and Chow. And it's like that's all they get. That was for like 25 people.
Yeah.
They don't get paid. Yes, we did take them there, and yes, we did spend $800. So that's what that is. And plus, I think on one of them we had somebody from the media that attended one of those meetings, or at least came by, took a picture or something.
Do we have that as a written policy?
No. Maybe we
So
should get.
we need to, right, no, we need to do, they stopped, right, for many years, we didn't use anybody, we used officers and other police department employees as bailiffs. It's a COVID and they come back.
That's right.
We're gonna talk a lot about some of this
Yeah.
stuff with the very young report.
You're exactly right. But the bailiffs.
We need to get them, I saw someone and I said, please get with Cindy and get the lunch
Yes.
schedule.
Because it's also the citizen patrol. It's basically that same crew, because some of them are both ways. And I know that Mark Stevens, he's the one that sets it up. So if you also send him a message, let him know we do want to get
On
that.
the elevator the other day.
Yeah.
You need to get.
We just got too late in the season, and then they had that spike right around
All of
Christmas.
those seem to be on the basically retired person that are doing other jobs. Is there anybody under the age of 30 that's a bailiff, that's a citizen patrol, or or 50, whatever. I mean,
Say 60. I would be 60.
Well, here's how I'm being kind. I guess the point is if you were to have a small stipend, there's a college kid that had time that wanted to be citizen patrol, that wanted to someday do something with that skill set. It's got to look at this.
Yeah, I don't know how you would, you couldn't do a stipend for some and not for everybody.
No, it's gotta be for everybody.
There is and I think we've talked about it a couple of times. Some places have I think Mary called it the public safety ambassadors. And
Right.
so there's civilians starting at 18 and older. And they do a lot of the things what our volunteers do, except they're paid position at a lower rate, obviously, than the police. But they do certain things, and then they use that as a little bit of a funnel to the police officer positions, because you hire at 18,
Right.
and they work there for a few years, and they're eligible to be a police officer, and they just move right into that. And so there are some of those kind of things that we kind of talked about a little bit.
I think some of that's gonna come from the very dumb.
It will, it will.
With the bailiffs, I think. We'll talk about that in the debate.
Yeah.
The report potentially. They managed. They managed. In the years when court was open and the bailiffs weren't back, right?
Oh, they did, and then it would be, and the point with that, Mayor, that you're making is that. We don't really need somebody that's the certification of a police officer to be doing the bailiff stuff,
Right.
but maybe we need somebody at a certain, still called
Right.
stipend level.
Right.
To do that, is trained, that understands that, and then they get, they have the ability to do that. So they'll be like,
courts have paid
Yeah.
million bailiffs.
that's right.
Right.
And Chief, the way I would see it too, and this is just maybe a precursor to the very done, I want to see when that comes out finally. But there may be like 3 different stages of these ambassador type people. That do different things for the chief. One thing like Citizen Patrol, which is an excellent program, but it's not quite the same model as Sandy Springs has. We don't have the number of volunteers, we're not the same size city, there are 120,000 people or something. So they have that system, and they also have some abilities to do other things. Now, when I say abilities, are there maybe at more higher risk? I don't want somebody out there directing traffic, they're not trained to direct traffic. Because that last thing we need is for them to get run over. And we don't need somebody hurt. So we have to have somebody with certain training.
They've also been able to, for whatever reason, attract some of the younger people.
Yeah, they have.
About even some professionals that are doing this a little bit on the side of volunteering at Sandy Springs. I think last time I checked, they had about 35 volunteers.
For Citizens Patrol,
Yes,
because I think they pay their bailiffs. Maybe,
I don't know.
I don't know either, but I think they.
But that's something that it's on the radar. The other thing I really want to talk about though, and I want y'all to discuss, if it's okay, is the stipend for for the boards and committees. Years ago, for the planning commission that I ran in both different jurisdictions, 3 different jurisdictions, they made $100 per meeting, the chairman made 125, and that was way back. It's just for your time, so to speak, to give you some kind of stipend. But I don't know if those numbers are still good. Right now, we're at 0. We don't offer them anything. So it's just a matter of just saying, hey, this is for your time. Maybe that makes somebody have a little more priority coming to the meeting. We don't have attendance problems. But that's just up to y'all. I think when the city first established, I wasn't here. John, you were on the council. I don't know if at the time we were all like, we're volunteer only based, or if there was even any.
It was all set up as volunteer.
Okay, so I don't know if that's something y'all want to do, because it is something we'd like to have an answer. Not necessarily right this second. I'm ready if y'all are ready this second, but no, but I mean, it's just in theory, you want us to research it. How about that? You want us to research the numbers.
Do you have any more slides?
There's 2 more slides. Talk about this.
Do you have like an ask? You have a slide with your asks?
No, I don't have a slide with
Do
it.
you know why there are attendance problems? I mean, when I was on ZBA, like, we didn't have attendance problems.
So I think there was a previous member of the planning commission who's now not longer, who had a terrible attendance problem and was reappointed. For years, I didn't reappoint that person. And then that person was crushed, and I'm like, you never went.
Well, and then you are gonna talk about training, because if they have to get no training and they have no expectations, and
Planning commissioners require training. The state requires training.
we aren't training.
I'd like to start with what are our expectations
Okay.
of them, and let's define that.
Sure.
So when I talk to someone, my first question is, are you available on the second Tuesday every month, because that's critical, right? Why take our time if you have a standing tennis game or whatever, and you're never gonna be able to be there. So my first question is, and I said, these are once a month meetings, you know, it's critical for you to be there. And I say, and whoever, you know, if you choose to accept it, you'll get training, which maybe you'll get training, but the training they've been getting is open meetings, open records. I don't know what happened during the pandemic.
No, they did get us on training.
Yeah, there was.
Yes.
For the last 9 years, they have.
have that to NRC, Richard says.
It's an all day. Right.
But
Then
something for you this year.
Right. We offer different types of training, so this time,
Required.
and I think. And so one thing that I did for the training aspect, you know, the other day, one was last Tuesday.
Right.
You know, I did a training session with them personally, and I had, you know, Richard was, his whole family was there. And what I wanted them to know was basically is, but in each board's different, but on any board, some of the stuff is the same, which is y'all are for the zoning board, y'all, they're the first, I said, y'all are the first line of defense for the city council to start vetting a project. This is the first time you have a public hearing. Thank you, planning commission, thank you. So it's their first line for y'all to start that whole entire process. So please ask the proper questions. You know, ask the applicant stuff. If the applicant's application is not complete, let them know. Hey, look, because sometimes the applicants think this is just a pass-through. I have to get through here to go to the city council, then I'll present the real project. No, you need to be sent back, but y'all have to present the real project now.
And I am a little confused because, and I could be remembering incorrectly. But, and this is in the weeds, but since you said it, I thought a few years ago, we made it clear that applications could not start the process unless they were completed. Did that never make a policy change?
It made it, but it's still
Okay,
something the staff.
that's not okay.
Yeah, no,
Just
the staff did not, it's not where it needs to be in my opinion. It
Right.
needs to be improved more. And I realized that, especially on some of the latter cases we've heard, not picking any one case.
No, but just in general, an applicant needs to present what the council is going to see to the planning commission. Even if it's just a recommending body, it's not, or it's not okay, and so it needs to be complete.
And I told the staff too, you need to hold it up. Don't schedule the meeting.
Right,
If it's
they-
not
right,
ready.
that's what I thought
You
we had
don't-
agreed on this years ago.
Are we talking about?
Application.
An application.
Application, so
Yeah.
if you're,
Specific.
so some jurisdictions, or maybe not. But we had a problem with applicants coming in and incomplete packet or incomplete application being submitted to the planning commission without all the information.
I thought this was somebody said about the word.
No, complete planning commission.
So, well, complete application, complete zoning application.
Right.
Yeah. So the parking lot.
Yeah.
Make sure we hear the boss.
Yes. Either fall on the complete, what?
Complete zoning applications, and then put Richard out to the side. He'll be here tomorrow because that's parking lot will still be up there.
There were policy changes made in the city that I think may have impacted how the planning commission operates. Because when I first joined, they would postpone things repeatedly.
That's right.
First thing.
Right. Right.
So the council said, look, you're taking way too long
Right.
to approve
Right.
a tree ordinance, for example.
Right, got it.
And so then it dropped to, well, we got like 2 bites at the apple,
That's right.
1 bite at the apple, so things started getting
Mhm.
flipped a lot
But
quicker.
it didn't, that is fine, but that's not the problem in this. The problem is it an incomplete application? Whatever the applicant presents to the planning commission, I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure.
No, that's.
No, whatever is presented to the planning commission needs to be what we see. They
Yeah.
can't add more after.
Right.
I mean, they can clarify, I guess, but the packet needs to be.
But there's
And
two
staff
tools.
knows what that means, so we
There's
don't.
2 tools that can be used.
Right.
And like, you're right, the other night, they mentioned that, they go, oh, we only get 2 bites of the apple. I said, you're not thinking about it correct.
Right.
I said, number one is, which what you said, the application has to be right. I said, you're not burning one of your times. If you say timeout, you gotta finish the public hearing, because you've already advertised it. The timeout, you need to go back. This is not going anywhere. Tell the staff, you've got to redo it and encourage the applicant to pull it until they get it right. The second part of it is they can send it forward, they being the planning commission, to y'all with a recommendation to send it back to them.
Yes, they can.
It shows the applicant 2 things. One is you didn't bring your right game forward. Yes, it delays the process, but that's not our fault. You should have had the right application, because they sent it to you, then y'all can send it back. That's the second tool. One tool is they can send the tool is send it forward with to be sent back. In other words, no recommendation. And then y'all can send it back as the second tool to the planning commission. If you're not happy with it, it buys y'all time. You still legally have to do the public hearing, then advertise. But remember in Georgia, only one public hearing is required. And that's already occurred at the planning commission level. Y'all are not required to have a public hearing. The city is.
But the goal is.
But they do because it becomes a zoning ordinance for that property.
We can have a public meeting, but not a public, you already had a public hearing. for
Well,
zoning.
we need to probably think about that.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is,
We're not changing that. Right. Yeah,
They shouldn't even be able to schedule the hearing
that's right.
until the packet is complete. And I thought, quite frankly, we fixed this many years ago.
It's, yes, it happened, but like the one other day, it didn't seem that way.
Right.
You know,
No,
that was the
just not
problem. Okay, all right.
confident.
So
here's,
here's the,
here's one solution to that problem there. Y'all have the ability to not approve and send it back for remand to the planning commission. Just
Right.
remember, you got that tool, no matter what comes up as a recommendation. If there's something that's changed in that packet,
send it back.
or if there's a question that needs to be clarified as part of the criteria for consideration of the matter, y'all can remand it back to the planning and zoning commission for further hearing.
You can also deny it.
You could-
That's right.
Yes.
There's a lot of tools. And don't be afraid to use those tools. Ken's gonna talk about that some more in just a minute. I wanted to hit this real quick.
Eric, I'm been pausing,
Can we go back to?
Sure.
yeah,
We're talking about stipends, right? We're
Right.
talking
Yes,
about-
thank you.
So we need to close that.
thank you. I'm ready to have a conversation about this subject now.
So
When
go
y'all,
ahead.
So
Oh, go ahead.
how many board members and bailiffs do we have and which boards and bailiffs, like, what, are we short people or do we just have one or two boards that aren't functioning well? I guess, what's our scope of our, how we're doing in terms of fund volunteers?
What's the one?
So the why of this was because the planning commission had a 4-hour meeting. It doesn't happen often, but it happens, and maybe in part because the packet wasn't complete. But 4-hour meetings, we have, well, since Catherine got on, we always have 4-hour meetings. But we used to have 25-minute meetings before, when she came to watch us have meetings. And so the question is if they're in any given month spending more time than we are in a meeting, should they be compensated for their time? That's really the question.
So, but we would want to do this for all of them.
No, well, not necessarily, but I don't know. I mean, we probably would need to do it for all.
If you, the other ones rarely meet. It's those are the
But-
main ones.
Right.
Sustainability meets to,
Sustainability meets monthly.
right. So you have the planning commission, the zoning, ZBA, sustainability, alcohol, probably the next one. we
Yeah,
And that's a big right, and then you have the other ones that don't meet. So I would just set a flat
You know,
out.
some that have legal standing, the ZBA, the planning commission, we need to have as a zoning
Mhm.
related aspect.
Right.
The alcohol one makes a decision and a recommendation.
That's big.
Legally standing ones, and nothing against some of them, but they're not legally standing.
And they rarely ever meet too.
They're advisory. and-
Right.
Eric,
rarely-
can I just clarify real quick? Are you asking for permission for staff to go back and create a plan to bring to council?
Yes.
That's a
So
good way to.
we're not trying to solve the
Yes.
who and what. What we want is, these are, after looking at it and comparing what other communities do, these are the ones we feel need a stipend, this is the amount, and this is. the
All of
amount.
them. And just-
Okay, so we'll come up with a proposal.
But I mean, is that what you all want to see?
I'm fine with taking
It would be an interesting, yeah.
Okay.
I would also, like, as part of that. You know, like, we were talking that, well, there's training they have to do, but if they don't want to do it, they
Yeah,
don't
if
do
they
it.
choose not
If they
to.
choose not to do it,
Right.
Well, but see, we would have to, we're gonna talk about that
And
separately.
that's what
And
Ken's
Joe,
talking about.
stop
It
the
is-
scandal. Go ahead.
so I'd like to, from the delivered takeaways are define. Clear expectations in writing for everybody's, if you want to be on a board, this is in writing, what we expect out of it. So that is a deliverable, and it would be in the application as well. So those, and then obviously attendance, but I'd like to talk about training and have that conversation because I'm a big proponent of requiring training.
So,
As a part of your agreement, and if you don't, aside from the development authority, which is an authority, we can't throw anybody, we can't throw anybody off the development authority. Right, period. Once they get assigned, we can't, but if you're on a ZBA and we said you need to be training after a year and you haven't gone, or you're not meeting meetings, can they be?
no.
Those slides are coming up.
Yeah, there's a second part to this, which
The
is.
second part, it's, they're gonna sign a contract, terms and conditions, if you wanna be a part of this board, these are our expectations, are you fulfilling that contract to allow review?
Okay, it doesn't matter what ordinance is right.
Okay, well,
What's next?
I'd love for doing that, and in exchange for that, okay, we're gonna give you a stipend. Because it's a lot of extra work we're asking you.
So stipend proposal from staff, which staff will come back with which groups, how much benchmarking against other communities, and is training required? And so
Well,
does
we're
it?
gonna get to those slides now.
Oh, all right.
The training, we'll get to.
Okay.
Expectation.
And we owe them a dinner, and we know that, and I don't know if Sharon started working on it or not.
Yeah.
And we're gonna invite all the ones that left during the pandemic.
It's the board appreciating them.
But this is the report that you all want.
Yes.
And we'll do that when, we used to do that during the week. Have all y'all, has everybody done one of those in the past? Cause y'all, we sit with COVID. That's right, that's right.
We're gonna have to do it bigger, so, like
Yeah.
yourself.
So we'll have that done. The, okay, this here, this is just a real brief. Y'all can ask questions on this if you want. I'm just gonna run through it and then Ken's gonna get up here and do his piece. But this is just how the zoning process works, as y'all know. This is what the mayor, you alluded to a moment ago. We want to be sure these things are done correctly. But you know, the process is started. We mail out the letters, everyone within 1,000 feet before the time. File the application, you know, with the staff as part of that. This is all part of a group effort here, group effort. And then the staff reviews the application. This is something that I want to expand right here. Where the staff reviews it, I want to expand it outside of the planning staff, where you have Michael Starling, you know, I'll be in there, or Jay, one of the two of us, or both. Also have Michael Smith in there, because some of the stuff is so interrelated. I want to have a sit-down meeting with that ahead of time. We do so few cases in a year. They need to be 100% perfect when it comes to y'all. It doesn't need to be
When
efficient.
it goes to the,
What's the compliance letter?
Review the application determine. Oh, if it meets the, it's just if it meet, I don't think it's worded right. If it's in compliance, I think is what they're trying to
what's
say.
a,
With our code?
Even the code. Yeah. In other words, does it have everything?
no, it's not right.
Well, what is
I mean, it would be if it's ready to be.
Yeah,
like,
right. In other words.
It's
everything's done.
compliant.
Let's meet the criteria.
Right.
Yeah, then we advertise it. Y'all know the rules there, which is at least 15 days, but it's not more than 45 days. Then we mail out the notices for everyone within 500 feet. As part of this notice process. Staff does a staff report. Here again, this is the part that I want to kind of focus a little bit more on, see what's the recommendations coming out of that group. You know, is it done in the correct manner that meets the policies and agenda for the city? You know, because there's the criteria, but they're all subjective. You know, I can write a report either way. You know, most of it. You can do it, but you got to understand your community and how that report needs to be written. Then the staff presents the case. And there's one public hearing at the planning commission and one at the city council. But one thing on going back to this number here, you know, we talked the other night about the 10-minute piece, remember? And most places do it the same way we do it, which is, you know, staff presents, the applicant presents. Technically, that could be part of their 10 minutes for their 4, but most time the problem is there's nobody that's speaking in favor of it other than the applicant, usually. You know, every now and then somebody else will get up there to speak, and that's what the 10 minutes, we've always said the 10 minutes is reserved for that group of people. And then the people against it, the other 10 minutes, and then that's it. That's how it's been done. I think at the same rate, you don't want the applicant to get up there for an hour advocating. They're there, that the staff's already made the presentation, you've reviewed it. One thing I encouraged the planning commission the other night was please visit every site. You can just drive by. You do not have permission to go on their property. But you do need to go look at the site, understand the neighborhood. See when people come to the hearing, oh yeah, I remember that you live in the blue house. I saw that house. You know, have some knowledge of that piece of property. You know, and if y'all ever want somebody to go with you, I mean, I used to do it all the time in the zoning. I used to remember Kyle, I'd take him out and look at the chairman, take him out and look at every zoning case before the meeting. And we'd go out and we'd ride the county. 13 square miles, you know, you can do, you know, as far as planning commission. So they have to look at the sites. So that's what we want.
Can I ask a question about that? Because, gosh, we were in the old building. City Hall, and I was on ZBA, and we had a training, and our city attorney was of the opinion that we should actually not go visit the site.
No, you don't.
Okay, I just.
You disagree? You gotta.
I'm right,
You
right?
can't
Yeah.
walk the side of the pool in the back door.
Actually.
Don't
we can-
trespass.
We were kind of told it from one point or another, told them to review the packet and make a decision based on the packet.
Yeah, you got, I mean.
Well, yeah. Let me answer that. So we have had zoning cases overthrown because somebody announces from the government that I researched this or I did that. That's a no-no. You're creating a record for a deal, it's gone.
Right.
But simply driving by and seeing a site, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you get out, you're gonna start talking to the neighbors.
Yeah.
And you're gonna create an investigative file separate from staff. That's a no-no. The record that you're considering is what's in the file presented to you. What is presented orally by staff, what is presented by the applicant, and what the public hearing comments are. I have no problem with somebody riding by and saying they saw it. Now, can you ride by in a group? No, because if you got a forum, that's an open meeting, right? Should you go talk to everybody over there after application? No, you should not do that. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second.
This is your.
So let's stay on that subject for P and Z real quick. I would like, there's a difference between somebody is moving from the Midwest and they want to relocate State Farm building in Dunwoody, right? And pre-application, they meet with staff because they're doing their due diligence. They want to meet who the mayor is. They may want to meet their district commissioner, Joe, whoever it is. That's fine. That's an opportunity to be hospitable. That's an opportunity to listen. It's not a time to commit to a vote. Because after application, I want you to think of yourself in terms of a juror. Anything you do outside the jury box may be violating the judge's instructions. Why are we saying this? Because cases get overturned because of emails, they get overturned from independent investigations. They get overturned. We created a record in a case recently. I just went, no, don't do that. Don't say that. It's not a time, and I say this very politely and respectfully. Y'all are all elected leaders. You're politicians also. A planning and zoning case is not a time to politics, because you then tend to say things that you think emotionally that are not in the criteria. You're a juror. If you can't sit there and be a juror impartially, recuse yourself. You can't try a case where somebody's already said, he's guilty as hell before I've heard anything. I went and did my own investigation over the weekend. You can't do that. So post application, you confine yourself to the record and what's being presented to you.
Can I ask a question
Please.
about pre-application? So someone comes and they call John and they say, I want to build this in your district. Can John be honest and frank about what he thinks since they haven't filed an application?
I think what I would do is, number one, I would never have a one-on-one meeting.
Okay.
Because I want to witness there from staff as to what you said.
Okay. That's
I want to treat that meeting like it's on camera and it's being recorded, because it may get played back one day. If you overcommit before the application, you may disqualify yourself as somebody that can actually decide that. If they're talking generically, what's going on in the master plan here, we'd like to put more chart, whatever. The generic omnibus future, that's perfectly probably fine pre-application. But when it gets to the pinpoints, you need to redirect them to staff and the code of ordinances and the development code and the zoning procedure. And be respectful to them. Hey, say, well, I can't pre-commit to a course of dealing with you on this application. I can tell you Dunwoody's open for business. We believe in opportunity and diversity and all these things. And we're happy to get staff to answer any of your due diligence questions, show you whatever you want to. I'm here to welcome you to our city, and I hope it works out for you. When you go beyond that, you're really pushing yourself where here's what happens. So the citizens are back here that may be against something, 50 people, 20 people, whatever. And you're sort of caught in the middle, right? What you don't want to do is you don't want your decision to be made by a judge one day. And that's what happens. When you go overboard being a politician, then the judge gets to decide the zoning, and you've taken it out of your hands. So if you follow these rules, it sort of keeps you safe and you can actually make the decision one day. I don't have a problem pre-application meeting with anybody, being nice. I say, take somebody with you, preferably a staff member, Richard McLeod, Paul, somebody, because I want somebody to say that be able to testify about what you said.
It's, but say, so they're coming to ask you questions. And they're putting something in front of you, and I get having somebody with
Right.
someone. But what you see, you can't stand.
So, you know,
What they're presenting is not anything you would ever, I mean, obviously, we don't prejudge, but what they're presenting is not something you find particularly interesting. How's that? Can you say, I don't find this particularly interesting?
well, pre-application,
Right,
pre-application, they may be trying to spoil you too intentionally. People plant people to create legal cases because they know there's no way in hell they're gonna take that dance parlor in this community. So you need to be thinking, is this really sabotage? But I would say this, yeah, I would say this, Madam Mayor. If somebody conceptually wants to do something, well, you know, the vision for this area might be a little more kid friendly or whatever. You're saying a generic thing, you're not committing to a course of conduct. But theoretically, the staff could be a little bit more direct
Yeah, so
in
that
the
was
due
my
diligence
next
part, right?
So Ken, what you're saying is, okay, I'll again, the hypo is an infill of 7 acres and they want to put in 9 new homes. And they say, sit down with the developer, I want to show you the plot, the layout, and show you some pictures of what we're thinking of presenting. This is pre-application. Should we talk about that or not? Should we meet them or not?
Well, here's what I'm gonna ask you a rhetorical question. If you think one day that's not something you like, do you want your decision to be replaced by a judge, or do you want to make the decision? The more you talk, the more likelihood you're creating a problem later that a judge is going to decide that. And remember, Georgia's a property rights state, so you got to be very cautious about your commitment. That's why you have a master plan. That's why you have staff. If you're making the decision, the staff should be tooled in, hey, this is our vision for this area. And then the staff can say, that really doesn't fit the vision, having a rock pour in the middle of the park. But you saying it, you're exposing, I'm just saying, and you're exposing some lawyer somewhere to be able to say something about your comments.
So Lynn, are we just saying, hey, we're not going to talk to you pre-applicant either?
Should we then cut off, you don't have to answer this today, it's gonna be parking lot.
Yeah.
But should we stop, I don't meet with applicants once they file. That's all. I do.
That should be the rule for
But
everybody.
should we meet with them before they file? If what you're saying is, I don't think you should build 9 homes there, I think you should build 7 is not appropriate.
I think you shouldn't be digging in the weeds like that. I think it's one thing to be a welcoming,
But okay, so we, anyway.
well, hopefully your zoning code is taking care of it.
So.
For pre.
Pre-application.
Application, what kind of communication engagement are we in?
Well,
What if they?
you're an ambassador pre-application.
Pre-application, there's a public notice that there's gonna be a meeting to talk about something open to the public. I am a member of the public able to attend that meeting.
That's when they inform.
Okay, so
But that's the.
I'm not sure I understand. Most applicants are not a pre-public meeting. They're just asking, can they meet with you player?
No, so, but even before
Before
I rephrase it, so what happens a lot here is that a developer or a landowner or somebody, a building owner will come to one of us and say, we want to share some potential visions for this piece of property. Can we share with you? And they bring you sometimes just 1, sometimes 5. And they're really looking, so in some cases, they're not, if you say yuck, they're not going to proceed. I understand that they could still proceed, but they're often looking for feedback. And so, because they don't want to waste their time and their money, because it's expensive, they don't think it can pass council. And so, and they're only coming to us, remember, if they can build by right, they're not coming to us. They're just building. We can show you examples all over Dunwoody.
Right.
So once they tell the city they're coming, they have to notify the neighbors within 1,000 feet. They mail letters and they have a meeting, a
Pre-application.
pre-application meeting. But so there's 2 issues.
But they're really applied once they have.
Right. Well, but they can still change their mind after the meeting.
Process is started.
Right, the process has started. So can council, John's question is can council people go to those public meetings?
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that,
Okay.
because no matter what you say, well, you got a First Amendment right to be a person, right? But you're elected 24/7. If you show up that meeting, you're creating the atmosphere where someone can challenge it one day. And then you're just putting yourself in the lot of people who may have, it's in both ears. That's just not a good scenario that I think you want to be in. You've got a staff review, you've got a vetting process, as planning and zoning commission doing their job. They should be vetting these things hard for y'all, and the recommendations coming up should be something that they sort of see the vision that y'all see. When there's a disconnect, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah, well, that's where your problem is.
So,
The same thing would then go for a non-profit organization that listens to what's happening in the community, listens to all zoning stuff. We shouldn't be attending that if they're presenting to that nonprofit organization.
So somebody asked this question, the neighborhood wanted to have a meeting and wanted to invite the council person to go to this meeting. I said, post application, don't go, because you're giving one side a separate hearing outside the time limits. It's prescribed to the jury to hear that, right? Don't do that. Pre-application meeting to be hospitable and friendly and a welcoming thing. That's a little bit different, but I would not get into details where I put myself on. You have to think yourself as a juror. Think yourself as a juror.
We're sequestered,
Theoretically.
but I'm still allowed to read Facebook and every email sent to me and maybe listen to that voice, that recording of some meeting that's on the internet somewhere. I'm sequestered.
not really
But I'm
sequestered,
not.
that's not. really
You
good.
shouldn't be blogging, you shouldn't be doing that. If somebody sends you an email, I just say, please, forward it to staff. I get worried about email communications. That's where the biggest growth in planning and zoning case. Look, I'm good friends with Doug Gillett. I know y'all probably had him back in the day. I tell you, Doug would take your 2 sentences that you sent back to somebody and make it a Supreme Court case one day, and your name would be on the Supreme Court decision. So I'm just saying, you kind of, just be careful.
So I think the takeaway from this may be that there's a disconnect. Not that there is a disconnect, but we need to make sure our comprehensive plan aligns with council. I think
Right.
that's really important.
So, yeah,
Council has changed, but also time has changed and the world has changed. And so, because what we want, what I think what you're saying here is that in our best case scenario, our council understands what council wants. I mean, our staff understands what council will support. And that really needs to come from our documents. Is that correct?
planning documents.
Right. Comprehensive.
Joint meetings with the planning and zoning commission, a retreat basis to have dialogue about the future of the city. Comprehensive plans being updated, meetings with staff about the vision for the city, and everybody buying into a single statement. That's to fix some of that problem.
You mentioned joint meetings, so like, yeah, like us meet with the planning commission and ZBA every once in a while,
Yeah, we're
have a joint meeting.
Not CBA, because we're separate.
right. CBA is a legal,
Yeah.
they hold a hearing. So it's a whole different standard.
It's a retreat, I
But
mean,
the planning commission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
CBA has to follow.
okay.
It would-
Y'all could have a
Plan.
retreat with the planning and zoning commission. Where all these items are discussed, the future plan, the plan that's on the map that y'all adopt, the comp plan. Whatever, and also training, which I'm gonna talk about training in just a second. I know we're moving along. Did I hit that all right?
Think.
Listen, and so y'all understand, because listen,
I mean, you did, it's just complicated.
Joe, I'm saying this. I look at Joe sometimes and I know he wants a yes. My job, just so you know, is to give you the best answer I can that can be defended in court. It's not my personal opinion. I don't care. I'm saying, I'm sorry, I don't care. When I mean I don't care, because my job is not to care emotionally. My job is not to politic, and my job is simply, look, the case law is not good when you go this direction. Understand, y'all do any damn thing you want to, and at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to defend it with the team, and we can either win or lose. And you saw what's happened in Brookhaven. Go up, they got bounced and blah, blah, blah. So we're giving guidance based on, we're in the rail. y'all's rail is a lot wider now, because you don't have to worry about the rail that we're in, but you do listen, and so I want y'all to know, this isn't because I'm trying to. I understand there's a pull on politicians and elected people. The citizens, especially in Dunwoody, I've learned, they want to call them, they want to call the mayor, they want to call Catherine, Hanky, what's going on? This is 2 foot wider than 2 feet. I get that. So I'm moving that away from that to just saying what we think works and doesn't work in courts. Okay. So training real quick. Can Dunwoody mandate training and attendance with consequence for failure to attend, which was asked earlier? So here's first. This is state law, all persons elected as members of municipal government authority shall enroll and attend and satisfactory completed course of training, education, matters pertaining to administration, operation, mandated training. If you leave office for 4 years and get reelected, you have to do this again as a newly elected trainer. That's state law. Newly elected officials, there's one that they have to attend within the first year of office. Newly elected official institute to provide general overview, blah, blah, blah. So there is, first, for elected people, some require training initially. Before I go to the next slide, you're going to find in your charter documents, which we've read 10 times, sunshine and still wondering, that when they create a government, they say, and anything that's allowed under the law. So the city charter says anything Georgia law allows. Georgia law says we don't have anything, but under home rule, you can adopt what you want. So we have this circular argument. It sounds broad, but there's never been supplementation of the underlying code or whatever else. That's why you can amend your charter, just like an ordinance. There's a process to do it, blah, blah, blah. So when we get to training, this is elected training of appointed board members. Now, I want to point out something because there's a lot of inconsistencies in your charter. Your charter refers to board members. And so what about commissions and authorities? It's silent as to that, although they mix them later on in the charter. Each appointed members of boards, and we're telling y'all that includes commissions and authorities, and I'll say why in a minute, shall be nominated by the mayor and approved by the council. Board members are not subject to statutory mandated training. That means board members, commissions, and authority are not necessarily subject to mandated training, but the council may establish a mandatory training program. And I'm not talking about the development authority where there's some training. There's a couple separate, this is a general catch-all, not for every subdivision. Board members are not subject to statutory mandated training, but council may establish mandatory training program for board members. That's in your code 2-87. If council establishes a mandatory training program and a board member fails to comply, the board member may be subject to removal for cause by the mayor and the majority of the council, blah, blah, blah. I want to talk about this. The reason why we're saying certain commissions and certain authorities, even though it's silent, is the method of appointment. So if the boards are appointed the same way as some commission and authorities, all members of boards, commission, authorities of the city, this is in your charter, shall be appointed by the mayor, subject confirmation by the city council for such terms of office and such manner of appointment is provided by ordinance. So if you appoint somebody for 4 years, subject to mandatory training, that's a condition of being in the office. That's in your charter. So I'm putting 2 and 2 together, although the dots don't connect as a straight line, and saying, if the charter says the mayor for boards, authorities, and commissions can appoint and y'all confirm, and y'all can place on them a term limit and such other manner of appointments provided by ordinance, that means you can say in the ordinance, subject to mandatory annual training. And if they don't do it, it's a condition of their job, right? So at least going forward, we know y'all can do this whenever y'all want to. Going backwards, anytime we have an ex post facto law, what I say is this: give people time to comply. You can't say, and I'm using a hypothetical. Let's just say somebody, and I'm going to use I like to use extreme things just to show the consequence. I can't tell an employee at Sharon Bernard, no CBL oil. If you test positive for CBL oil, you're out of here, and test them right then. I got to give them time to comply with the new rule, right? And I don't know what period of time CBL oil leaves your body, but that's an example. So if you're going to do something like this, I always say do it on a new fiscal year. Do it whenever there's plenty of leave. hey, this is gonna be a condition of you doing this going forward. And give them time to comply. Don't make it, starting now, that's why when we pass laws in Georgia last year, they're effective July 1 of the next year typically. It's time for people to comply. Training of appointed committee members. The mayor, this is committees, subdivisions of this council. The mayor may establish advisory committees, that's in the code. Committee members are not subject to statutory mandated training, but the mayor may establish a mandatory training program for committee members, that's in the code. If the mayor establishes a mandatory training program and a committee member fails to comply, such member may be removed with or without cause at discretion of the mayor. So if the mayor has full authority to appoint, she can make, and this is what's very interesting about charter, it's not in the authority of the mayor, but the code, the charter says that if, this is charter ordinance. That says if she has the power of appointment without confirmation, she can also put conditions on the appointment. How long? Training, etc. So Mayor, you also have on committees the power to do that in your charter. There's some exceptions. I'm gonna hit them just real quick. Construction Board of Adjustment Appeals.
We do the construction board, I mean,
They don't ever meet, but the board shall meet at least once a year for training. There's statutory required annual training on the Dunwoody code. The problem, I don't know that yours has ever even met.
We have not.
Okay, good.
An official meeting and then a couple of times for training.
Okay, Board of Ethics, the board shall receive biennial training on procedural rules, open meetings, open records law, and such other matters as pertain to the board's jurisdiction operation. And new board members shall receive the same training within 2 months after appointment. That's in the code. So that's Board of Ethics. Director of Development Authority, Redevelopment Authority, except for a director who is also a member of the governing body of a municipal corporation or county. Each director or member of the governing body or body of a development authority shall attend and complete at least 8 hours of training on development, redevelopment programs within the first 12 months of the director or member's appointment to development authority. That's in Georgia law. Director of Downtown Development. Well, we don't have a downtown, do we? Okay. So there are some exceptions that the law requires specific training for certain people. There's a little bit of a gap. The gap is that whatever we need to do going forward, we need to do it. That need to be our aspirational goal for 2024. Here's the rules of whatever.
So I feel very strongly that for the board, like, we need to get our act, we need to do the training, but I think we need to not make it a burden on the volunteers. So to spend 8 hours in an ARC office on a Friday is a big ask for people who have careers and only have 10 vacation days. I mean, there are a lot of people we would like to serve who couldn't do that. And when I went through the planning commission training forever ago, that we had these huge notebooks and we sat at City Hall and someone came to us and it was more than an hour. It was more than what you did,
Sure.
but it was at City Hall.
Yeah.
And we should be able to afford
do
to
that.
bring in a professional trainer or staff, however we want to do it. And make training in-house. So training, proposal from staff, just like Simon, right? For the same thing. So, yeah, which committees get what things.
And ZBA was the same thing, they came to us with the big binder.
Right.
So probably the same binder.
Right, it was a code.
But we also offer, if they want to go to the GMA,
If they,
they want
not
to,
GMA, it's ARC.
if they want to go to these other ones.
Right. They can you
Then we need,
But
you
yeah.
know, you put that in the, here's welcome, here's your welcome.
Right,
back.
but in a perfect world, I'm sorry, what?
Nelson, I mean, they were offered.
Right, it's so
Any question was offered theirs.
in a perfect world, every member of each board would get the same training. And so because then you're hearing the same things and it's unambiguous. And so, like I said, we were all there and I think we did it yearly or every other year. We did it. I was only in the planning commission for a few years. But I think we have to get back to that.
We can do that, yeah, absolutely.
And it has to be local, and there can be like an emergency backup of ARC or something, but it's important that everybody's hearing the same information. And then on the parking lot issue, you know, we talked a little bit in the past about combining planning and zoning, and I'm not a big fan of that. I don't know how council feels, but like, in Canton, where they actually probably do something, the building inspections board is part of their ZBA, their zoning review board. And I know we have to have, that's not a question I can answer. Like, we have to have the construction review board, that's required. But does it have to be an independent board, or can it be ZBA? And that, I think they said, I don't know if you heard of it. I think they said-
Same members can sit on two boards.
Right.
The construction board has a specific requirement, I think, there's knowledge, but they can still sit on the other.
Well, but that doesn't work then either, because the construction review board has to, but anyway.
I mean, your training is, I'd also like to just, when we ever get to the staff recommendation of encouragement of saying, oh, by the way, if you're interested in going to this. If it works for your schedule, the city would reimburse you for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they've been on the planning commission for 8 years and they want to go get some refresher training and we're gonna be your mayor, go wherever.
But in a perfect year, they would have this training every other year with us. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I was on ZBA for years.
You did it multiple times.
No, I got it once.
So there's like the urban design best practices, you know, there's all these other
Well-
courses that are coming online
Right.
that they could, for professional development. Encourage
Right.
them to understand.
But I think, so did we give you guidance?
You did, no, that's excellent. That's what we needed. Mayor, so that's the presentation we got this afternoon. What we have, a couple of things on the agenda and I'll mention one of the items. So dinner is at 6:30. And so, and the rain's gonna move out about by 7 o'clock, it says on the radar. So that'll be over with, the little storm. will over. But dinner's at 6:30, if y'all want to go take the time to put your stuff in your rooms, we can do that. But I also want to make sure, are we on track? Is there anything, let me go to the agenda real quick for tomorrow, just so y'all know. But it's already, okay, so tomorrow morning, 8:15 is when we start. Bonds, capital, SLOSS, and finance discussion is going to occur the first thing in the morning. We'll have Tom Lambert's going to lead them with council side of things. We're also going to have all our bond people here from outside to go over that. So we'll have that presentation there. The Dunwoody Village, Michael Starling, Richard McLeod, and Michael Smith are going to be here to talk about the Dunwoody Village. Also, Smith and McLeod will be here at 11 o'clock to go through pedestrian safety. We break for lunch around 12 o'clock. We also have our communication, citizen participation, with Jennifer Betcher at 1 o'clock. Then we go back at 1:30, and this is just rough time. Constituency response, customer service, RFP process. Michael Smith and I are going to do that along with Ken Bernard. Get those items tomorrow. Breakfast is served, what time is breakfast? Is just a range of.
No, it's just when you, 7:30.
Yeah,
Just when you get up and get down there, 7:30.
We're starting at 8:15.
8:15.
And if
That's-
breakfast closer to 7.
You can have- I would just go down and see some coffee, and there may be a coffee, I don't know if there's coffee in your rooms, some coffee drinkers. I'm not a coffee drinker. So.
I don't think it's a.
But if y'all have any questions, Mayor, is there anything that we missed today from the mark that we need to hit or talk about in the parking lot? Or anything up here, or we can hit it tomorrow, of course, but I was gonna make sure, if there's something else we need for tomorrow, if you want another department head to come up, I can certainly arrange that as well.
Does anybody have? Anything about like? Missed or?
Everybody have.
We're gonna talk sustainability a little.
We can talk sustainability.
Placeholder to.
We're not talking. I don't remember, maybe the originally one, maybe you're the only one, but that doesn't make sense. So we can add sustainability at the end.
Okay. But tomorrow,
Tomorrow,
at the end of the,
Well, we might want to do it right before lunch, because it would follow.
Are they
and
staying?
they'll take it for lunch, they'll take it. They're fine. The chief's gonna stay with us through dinner tonight,
Good.
and then he's gonna head back. So, but we're here as resources, for whatever you know.
With the police stuff, I mean, it doesn't matter, we need to do what we need to do, but I think from a citizen perspective, it would be really interesting to look at these cities' budgets. Because,
Most of them have a lot larger budget.
yes, right, even if they're the same population as us, but I think that's, I mean, it does, again, we have to do what we need to do. There's just no question that we have to address it, in my opinion, I'm a vote. But it is, part of this is unlimited, or in some city cases, they pretend they have. But it's, something is, we gotta figure something out, but I think that's a part of this discussion and budget. So. I mean, again, we have to do it, but I think for the public, I think they need to understand that when you have hundreds of millions of dollars every year annually in a budget for a population similar to ours, it's very different than when you have, we're making different kind of choices, so
Right, that's right.
they are talking about our needs spots.
Well, I thought it's interesting too, what Canton Police Chief said about people without driver's license and things of that nature, and how, you know, they have a different item. I mean, I've been stopped, I've been staying in this room just for doing a license check, you know, and I don't, and we do that on occasion. And usually, when you go fishing like that, you end up with some, some violations. Some of them, you know, people have warrants on them for different reasons and stuff like that, and they are beneficial. But it was just interesting, his comment about rentals. Okay, Mayor, if you're okay, you want to, I don't know, do we have to adjourn, Chair, or recess?
Need a motion to recess? Joe and second Rob. Any further discussion?
That was
Hearing none. Oh, that was Tom. Tom seconded it.
one amendment minutes.
Tom seconded it. And then all in favor? Thank you.